Hey everyone, if you're enjoying my RM audiobooks, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that hype, and maybe check out my Patreon if you want to support the channel even more. Your support means a lot and helps me keep these coming. Now, sit back and enjoy the story.
Oath fulfilled and a new tale begins. Chapter 1. It was over. I looked at the girls coming over to my house's direction after their long and perilous battle. My sister Miyu was looking all battered and tired after those dangerous fights that she did against the Ainsworth. Ilyasville, my sister's dear friend too, looked the same. I turned at the older girls, Tosaka, Edelfelt, and the Fraga. They look exhausted, although they tried to not show it on their faces. Unai-chan. My sister called for me as she finally noticed me. I smiled at her. Her face turned pale as she saw how beaten up I was. Wounds all over my body, including the diagonal one on my face. Then she finally noticed the bodies in my hands along with the older girls who gasped at them. Tosaka Rin especially, looked really pale as she noticed to whom one of the bodies belongs. She must have noticed her beautiful purple hair. Mata Sakura. The group then ran toward me at a fast pace. They too then turned at the other body. Angelica Ainsworth. It was quite weird since when I killed those fake Shinji and participants, their flesh turned back to puppet ones, but not for the blonde woman in my hand. Unai-chan, are you alright? And are they? Miyu asked. I nodded sadly at her. Shirou-san. Ilyasville too has her eyes puffed and begins to tear up. The older girls just looked away with closed eyes except for Tosaka, who ran her hand through Sakura's hair. Then she too began to tear up, muttering, "Rest well, sister." From that, I finally know why the black-haired girl looked sad when she listened to my story at Sakura's part. But then, as if the time is up, the sky begins to crack, alarming all of us. Hi! All of us turned to look up at the broken sky. What's happening? The magenta-haired woman asked with a grim expression. The world can't handle it. A voice rang behind the girls. A boy with blonde short hair and red eyes steps up toward our group with a dark expression. Gil-kun, what do you mean by that? Pandora said that. Yes, Pandora. He cuts in. I know what he means immediately, and before everyone can speak up, I opened my lips first. The world can't handle the Pandora's box being opened in the age of man. Everyone turns to me with an alarming look. You're quick in the uptake, faker. The blonde kid known as the King of Uruk, Gilgamesh, smirked at me while he said that. Then, what can we do to stop it? My sister desperately asks the King of Heroes, but all she gets is a shake of his head. No. This isn't all. Gilgamesh adds with a heavy sigh. I really would like to congratulate all of you for giving me such entertainment, but your time is up. As soon as he said that, everyone starts to glow, including the King of Heroes. What is this? What did you do to us, Gil-kun? You fool! He clicks his tongue. Then his eyes turn to me, followed by the others. No. I smiled at my sister, who begins to tear up. It seems like even in this world, you won't have a happy ending, faker. Gilgamesh snarked at me, but it isn't similar to what I knew from Emiya's memories. There is a tiny bit of remorse in his wordings. You're mistaken, King of Heroes, with this, I'm certain that this is a happy ending for me. Everything for your little sister, huh? The king then begins to laugh. You are always interesting, faker. No, Emiya Shirou. Be grateful that the king mentions your name. Gilgamesh did a 180 turn around, but at that moment, I noticed his lips curling up a bit. Unai-chan, why? I turned to my sister, who approaches me slowly with tears falling off of her cheeks. Don't worry about me, Miyu, as long as you're safe, then I'm satisfied with this. I put down both Sakura and Angelica on the ground before Miyu wraps her arms around me. I returned her embrace. No. I don't want to leave you alone here, Unai-chan. I didn't say anything but gently stroked her hair. But why only Shirou-san? Ilyasville asked. Her face too is wet with her tears. The Holy Grail. Edelfelt, the girl with blonde hair styled in large coils, spoke up. Shirou wished to the Holy Grail for Miyu to live happily in another world, therefore she is registered as an otherworlder, not of this world. I nodded gratefully at the sobbing girl for explaining it to the others. This is unfair. Tosaka spoke up beside Sakura. From her voice, I can tell that she too is crying. The Frogga then stood up with her hand reaching halfway toward me. While it was only for a while, it was an honor to fight alongside someone fearless like you. I reached for her hand and we formed a handshake. The same for you, I replied before letting go of her hand. Then I noticed the glow around their bodies are getting brighter. It's almost time. I hugged my sister for the last time and she did the same before I kneeled to her eye level. Miyu. I wiped her tears. Be happy, alright. Ai-chan. She sobbed. I can't, not without you. I smiled warmly at my spoiled sister. Miyu. I called her name gently. It might be hard in the beginning, however, you are not alone anymore. I turned to Ilyasville, Tosaka, Edelfelt, and the Frogga. They knew what I mean immediately and nodded at me. You have your friends with you, right? You've overcome so many things before you got here, and I'm sure you'll do fine without me. Ai-chan. She hugged me again, this time tighter than before. I love you, Ai-chan. I love you too, Miyu. With that final parting words, I moved my sister to Ilyasville's side. Tosaka and the other girls too had lined up in front of me as they starts to become see-through. Please take care of Miyu for me. I bowed at the girls, surprising them a little. Don't worry, Shiro-san, I'll always stay with Miyu. Ilyasville replied as she choked on her breath. She'll always be fine in my care, Shiro, I promise this in my house's name. Edelfelt too assured me with her words. The Frogga only nods at me but I'm sure she'll do the same for Miyu. Emiya-kun, there's something that I want to say to you, I turn at Tosaka. Thank you for being the reason Sakura smiles when she was alive. As for Miyu, I promise we'll make sure she's happy. You're welcome Tosaka. We nodded at each other as she wipes her tears. Ai-chan. Miyu. I smiled at her. It's a shame that I won't be able to see her grow up. Goodbye. The second I said that, they fades away. I didn't miss the look Miyu gave me at the last second, but I couldn't catch the last words she uttered. I fell to the ground and sat between the lifeless bodies of Sakura and Angelica. Then I look up to the sky where the crack is getting bigger. Earthquakes are occurring at the same time. I can see the houses start to crack. The very earth itself starts to split, and it might be my imagination but I think I saw magma spurting out from the cracks. So, this is how a world ends. With that said, I carried the two sleeping princesses back to my house. Waiting for the inevitable. That was how the story of Emiya Shirou ended. Alone, but my oath was fulfilled. It is different from how the heroic spirit Emiya dies. But both of us fought for our dreams. His to become the hero of justice, while mine is to become a hero for my sister. Or that was what I thought. I was sure that I died that time when the world ended. But here I was, opening my eyes in a dark, gloomy cave, which had a deep red color for the wall and the ceiling. I looked around the deep red cave incredulously then sat down, looking to my left and right, noticing the bodies of the girls that I'm familiar with weren't with me. Of course not. Then I started to push my hand toward the ground to lift myself up, it failed, however. Because I fell on my side. That was when I realized that my body shrunk. Yes, shrunk. I looked at my small hands and checked my clothing which somehow had been fixed. Blue jeans and long-sleeved blue and white shirt with an oversized black coat that I wore the day before Sakura came to my house. What the hell? I rolled my coat's sleeves and opened and closed my small fists. My left hand was tanned, similar to how it was while my right was not. Trace on. My magic circuits were the same as before, fully activated, but I can feel that they were a lot better. That was a relief in my case. At least I wouldn't have trouble facing whatever things that would jump me in this place. I projected a small hand mirror to check my look. Gah. It was not because of the white tufts of hair among the auburn on my head, but my look too turned into a 10-years-old one. I touched the diagonal scar right in the middle of my face that Sakura gave me back then, it had healed up but it remains. I dismissed the mirror in my hand before this time the twin falchions showed up in my hands. Then I began to exercise my body to see how much weaker I got. Nope. I was not weaker. But I felt really different. My movement was a lot faster and more powerful than when I installed the archer card. I didn't feel anything uncomfortable from swinging the falchions even though they were bigger than my arms. Hey, what the heck is going on? I dismissed the weapons before checking my pockets, coats, and pants. Surprisingly, there were 7 cards that weren't supposed to exist since they were already destroyed in my back pocket. Other than that, 3 protein bars for breakfast, lunch, and dinner perhaps? The last one, which was in my coat's pocket, was Sakura's scarf. Okay, this is getting weirder and weirder. I decided to put them back in my pocket. Not wanting to think about it right now. I took a deep breath, trying to arrange my thoughts. First, I was supposed to be dead since the world ended right in front of my eyes. I was laying down inside my house with Sakura and Angelica beside me. Second, I woke up in a creepy cave with deep red color as its palette. Third, my body shrunk yet my magic circuits were still there with improved qualities and physical capabilities that are much better than Emiya's. By better, I mean a lot. Though my skin was still tanned and my hair lost some of its pigment. I chuckled dryly at that. Fourth, the class cards were in my back pocket although they were destroyed in the war against the Ainsworth. The other things that I had in my pocket were 3 protein bars and her scarf. I creased my brows and rubbed the bridge of my nose tiredly. This is definitely not my world, but I think I should try to get out of this cave first. I started to walk through the cave blindly with no direction. I can see clearly if I focused myself, therefore it was not a problem. After several minutes of walking in this gloomy cave, I paused and tried to focus on listening to the sound of footsteps. Someone's being chased, by the sound of the steps, might be a girl/boy, while the one who chased them has a heavy thud on the ground, definitely not a human. I grimaced and then started to run in the direction where I heard it. Then I made a mistake. I kicked the ground too hard and it was dug quite deep. I almost kissed the ground because of that. Note to self, try to control my physical capabilities in the free time I will have later. I started running again, this time I didn't use a lot of strength but I was going really fast. Papa! Help me! I was near. I could hear a girl screaming for help. The heavy steps behind her too were kicking up a gear. In the next few seconds, I finally saw the thing that was chasing the girl in red and white collared one piece. What the hell is that thing? It stood more than 3 meters high. Its body looked like it was melted because I could see the smoke coming out from it. On its head, there were 2 horns sprouting from it. Papa! Where are you? Help me! The girl cried again. This was no time to be surprised by that thing. Trace on! I called forth the sword of Beowulf, grunting to my hand. The black-colored sword with a long grip was thrumming at its prey, recognizing the thing as a beast that must be slain. This time, I jumped at the thing that was about to grab the girl. Hey-ah! I swung the sword vertically at the monster. It was truly a hunt, the monster didn't notice me at all. Then, the monster split into 2. There was no blood coming out of it, making me truly wonder what this thing was. I looked at whatever was left of the corpse that was slowly absorbed by the ground. Then I heard the sobbing of the girl. I turned to her. Her blonde hair was covered with dirt and grim while the red dress was with mud. She too had several grazes on her knees and arms, not too deep but enough to leave a scar if not treated properly. I took a deep breath. Can I communicate with her? I don't even know if I'm in Japan right now. Her look definitely says that she is not Japanese. I started, and the girl slowly looked up at my face. Are you alright? She stared at me for several seconds before finally nodding at me. That was a relief. I'm so glad that she can understand me. That means I'm probably somewhere in Japan, as for where? I don't know but I'll find out later. I reached out a hand for her to help the girl stand up which she readily took. I'm Shiro Emiya, what about you? Aiz Wallenstein. That was the start of my tale with the girl named Aiz in this gloomy cave. What I didn't know was that there would be a life-changing event again soon after we got out of here. Oath fulfilled and a new tale begins. Chapter 2. Aiz Wallenstein. That doesn't sound Japanese at all. But that'll be for later, right now I better get us out of here before more of that monster come at us. I looked at the girl who was still staring at me with an abashed look. Her golden eyes glittered a little when they met mine. Her lips were still open as she stared at me. By the way, she is still holding my hand and hasn't let go. Is there something wrong? She shook her head and then opened her lips. I give you my gratitude for saving me, Shiro-san. She held my hand with her two hands, appreciating what I did. She was so formal just now. Is she a princess or someone in a higher position? You're welcome. I'm not really good with formality, I hope you can forgive me for that. And please, just call me Shirou, there is no need for formality, Wallenstein-san. Then, please call me Aiz, there is no need for formality either, Shirou. She smiles at me at that. She doesn't cry anymore, but I can see her eyes are still puffed because of all the crying that she did just now. Then I nod at her before I ask the question that has been bugging me. If I may ask, what are you doing in a dangerous place like this? Please talk to me normally, Shirou. As for the reason why I'm here, I was chasing a beautiful butterfly in the forest and when it was gone, I realized that I'm already deep inside the dungeon. Dungeon. Okay, another thing to note. A dungeon with monsters inside it. Definitely not Japan or anywhere in the world. But still, to forget about her situation because of a butterfly definitely says that she's still a kid although she can be too formal. Do you know which direction where you came from then? I can escort you outside if you want to. Yes, please. That was almost an immediate answer as she gripped my hand tighter than before. I don't remember which direction I came in, but I know there is a stair leading to the next floor over there an hour ago. Eyes pointed in the direction where I came from. Hi. If only I arrived sooner in this dungeon, maybe she wouldn't be chased by that monster. Hey, how are you so strong? You seem around my age but you were able to kill the Hell Minotaur with one swing. As I was busy with my thoughts, she closed in real fast, her face was really close to mine, only several centimeters away. That was when I remembered that I'm not a 17 years old anymore but roughly a 10 years old kid. I still don't know how I become like this since it was only around a few seconds when I closed my eyes back when the world ended and when I opened them, I was inside this dungeon with a regressed body. Not that I'm complaining but I prefer my older height returned to me. Back to my current situation, I took a step back from her sudden aggressiveness. No, by the look in her eyes, it was as if a kid meeting their hero or something similar to that. I practice every day, I answered her. By the way, the monster's name that she mentioned, Hell Minotaur wasn't it? I know Minotaur from stories or alike, but I've never heard of Hell Minotaur. I wonder if that's why the body was melting and gave out smoke? Why are you answering me with a question? She tilted her head to the side, confused. Sorry, but I do practice every day. I answered her readily. Anyway, let's get you clean up a bit. I let go of her hands, or to be exact, I asked her to let go of my hand which she reluctantly did. Then I raised my hand a little with my palm facing upwards. Trace on. As the thing starts to form in my palm, I notice her eyes widen in surprise as she watches the spectacle. It was just a clean towel for her to wipe her face and hair. At least I want her to stay clean when we get out of here. You can use magic. Her voice was a few tones higher when she asked me that with a flushed face. Oh no. Can't you use it? I stuttered when I asked her that, fearing that magic was something impossible although they had monsters and dungeons. I handed her the towel as I asked the question. She shook her head as she took the towel. Mama said that humans can't use magic no matter how hard they practice, but... She stared at me with excitement on her face. You can use it, amazing. Oh. I know that look, the same look that Miyu always gave me if I did something out of her comprehension. You must be extremely talented as the elves since only them and some other demi-humans can use magic. She said giddily. Wait, elves, demi-human? The one with long ears? Yup, that concludes it. I'm not on Earth anymore. I'm not sent into the reverse side of the world, am I? But I said that there are humans, which means the highest probability is I'm in another world where demi-humans such as elves exist. I won't be surprised if I see a dragon running around on the surface if it's the case. Well, my father considered magic a very important thing to have in our lives to survive, therefore he decided to train me at an early age. Calling magecraft magic is a bit weird for me, but I don't want to explain something so difficult to a kid. Oh? Your papa can use magic too? But still, even if your papa can use magic, my papa is the strongest because everyone calls him a hero. I gave the blonde girl a light chuckle at that. It seems like she really loves her father. But a hero, huh? Then I can't wait to meet your father. Let's go then, Aiz. The sooner we get out of here, the sooner you'll see your papa. Aiz nodded readily before she started to walk beside me. The towel that she used had been long dismissed after she was done with it. It was kind of funny to see her trying to catch the motes of light. Right, before that I took off my coat and had Aiz to wear it since her one-piece dress was a sleeveless one. She must be quite cold because I could see her bare shoulders shuddering. She didn't say anything about it, but I can't just let a girl, probably younger than Miyu, to suffer like that. Thank you, she murmured. I nodded at her. My coat was too big for her since it was the same for me. I had to roll up the sleeves and the hem of my coat to ease her to walk. With that done, she took my hand again before we finally began to walk. Grrrwll. I turned at the now blushing girl. Are you hungry? I asked and she shyly nodded. All that running from the monster must have tired you. I took out the protein bars which were in my coat's pocket before giving them to Aiz. I don't have any water though, so you must eat them slowly, okay? She didn't do anything but stared at them for a few good seconds. Don't tell me. You don't know to open it. She shook her head. Well, it seems this kind of wrapper hasn't existed yet. I have to make sure to dispose of them properly after Aiz finished them. I took the protein bars from Aiz and tore the wrapper before returning them to the girl. You just need to bite onto it, and after you're done, don't litter, okay? Just give the wrappers back and I'll dispose of them later. She nodded and began to eat the food. In roughly a minute, the protein bars were gone. I underestimated her appetite. Aiz's POV. Shirou Emiya, that's what he said his name was. It's not a name that I'm familiar with, but he must be not from around our place since I had never seen someone my age with his features before. Some parts of his face and neck are tanned and the left hand I'm holding right now is the same. There are some white tufts in his auburn hair. I wonder if it's passed down from his parents. I can't see his eyes clearly, but I think I saw some golden in his eyes similar to mine, albeit a bit darker. He is able to use magic, although he looks older than me by a little. He is wearing unusual clothing that I've never seen before. From the coat itself, I know that it's a high-quality one since the fabric is really smooth on my fingers and it's really warm. He put it on me even though I didn't say anything about being cold. He's really attentive even though he's still a kid like me. Oh, and the foods he gave me too were really good. They're the kind of foods that I'd never eaten before, but the complex combination of different flavors just gave the perfect taste. I wonder if it's his homemade? And if he can cook, I hope that he will do it for me sometime later. Anyway, we've been walking for quite a while in the stairs opposite direction, but we haven't found the exit yet. There are monsters, like those hell minotaurs and hell ants that keep coming at us, but Shirou kept me safe by keeping me behind him and killing those monsters quickly. Each time before monsters showed up, I could feel the black sword in his hand thrumming a little as if warning us that monsters were approaching. Is it alive? Like the sword of thunder wielded by the clown who became a hero, Argonaut? Mama told me a story that the sword offered himself to Argonaut to use when he was in peril. I wonder if Shirou's sword is the same as the hero's? Then doesn't that mean he too is a hero? I shook my head slowly. That is not important right now. One thing that I know is I'm safe when I'm near him. We're surrounded. I turned pale before looking around after I heard Shirou says that. True enough, there were groups of hell ants surrounding us. They were not quite near, but slowly they were closing in on us. Trace on. There it is again, his chant to summon things on his whim, but this time it is not a towel. I see swords. There are so many floating swords circling us as if held by invisible hands. Their numbers seem to surpass the groups of ants. Not only that. From each sword, I can feel power thrumming from them. They are not new weapons freshly forged or bought, but swords that had been used for their lifetime. Sword barrel, full open. With those words, the swords launched all at the same time towards the group of ants, killing them instantly. I had to cover my eyes from the dust flying because of the wind pressure the sword gave. If I could describe it, it felt like when Papa and his friends trained and moved at an incredible speed. Then I opened my eyes after I felt the wind had settled down. The swords pierced through all the hell ants' hard carapaces as if made of butter and lodged themselves deep into the walls, rocks, and pillars. I look at Shirou in awe. Then, he turned to me, noticing my stare. I cannot become your hero, Aiz, because I'm your mama's. The memories of the past played in my mind. It was at the time when I asked Papa to become my hero. It will be great if one day you encounter a hero that solely belongs to you. As the memory fades away, I look at the boy who is slightly older than me in his eyes which somehow glow a little. His eyes are full of confidence and determination yet they are so kind. Don't worry, I'll keep you safe, I promise. I could feel a smile creeping onto my face when I heard him say that. Yes. Shirou's POV. It was then after the two of us had that brief exchange, I could hear footsteps from several people approaching our spot which was in the middle of the groups of ants. Luckily my projections were already gone when they arrived here. Aiz. Both of us looked in the direction of the alarmed voice. There were 3 people, 1 man and 2 women. The man had black hair and a silver longsword in his right hand. He wore a light brown shirt and pants under his white light armor. The 2 women, the one on his left had long ears instead of normal ones, indicating her elf lineage. She had jade-colored hair and wore a green outfit with yellow borders and a light green cloak over it. She had a staff made of steel which also served as a polearm in her hands. The woman on his right had tanned skin with long black hair covering her left eye and wore a revealing outfit like a dancer's covered with a thin veil. I would mistake her for wearing only underwear if we were still in Japan. But what surprised me more after that was when the latter moved toward me at a speed that I almost missed. Is she serious? I reflexively raise fronting to block her great sword which she swings at me. I can hear Aiz made a little yelp at the pressure the woman gives. Clang. Damn. I have to say, this woman's strength is almost at the same level as Sakura with the Berserker class card installed. My arm would have been blown off if my strength is still the same as before. The woman didn't stop immediately. While she did pause for a second and scrutinized me, she continued to swing her great sword again at me, this time at a speed and strength a level or 2 higher than before. I decided to reinforce my body a bit to keep up with the woman. There was no anger or anything like that behind her weapon this time, unlike the first time I blocked her. She was testing me. Curiosity got her instantly the moment we crossed swords the first time. I planned to hold back as much as I could, but it seemed the woman realized it and decided to force me to keep up with her. She was the one in control of the flow right now until I had no choice but to give her a large swing when our swords met each other again, pushing her back a few meters behind her group. My act seemed to surprise our 3 new guests since maybe they didn't expect a kid to be able to fight like that. But really? They attacked a kid with no hesitation? Or is it just limited to this tanned woman who looked like a battle-crazed warrior? Well, I suppose I can't blame her for that since looking from my position just now, they may have thought that I'm planning to kidnap Aiz or something since I'm holding a sword after all. Eveldine-san, please stop. Aiz came up from behind me soon after that with her arms wide open as if to protect me. Before, I could see that she was about to call the black-haired man as soon as she heard her name being called, but I guess the tanned woman or Evelda's speed was much faster than her reaction. I raised my hands at the new group. I don't have any bad intention toward Miss Wallenstein here. I saved her from a monster before. I said all that in a manner of a kid would, hopefully, they would buy it. Please don't pinch me, Aiz. I know you asked me to speak normally, but I can't help it this time. The tanned woman called Evelda was still observing me with a small grin on her face until the other woman decided to step in front of her, probably to not scare me more than this or not to start another dance. But I'll note to myself in case, Evelda, dangerous, especially that grin of hers reminded me of a certain lancer from Emiya's memories. The black-haired man or Aiz's papa sheathed his sword before he kneeled and welcomed Aiz with his arms wide. Aiz too then ran at her father. Papa. Aiz. I'm sorry for not noticing that you were gone. If only I did, you wouldn't be here right now. The man said with a hoarse voice. I guess he is really worried about Aiz. Then I glanced at the jade-haired elf who was still staring at me. Who are you and what are you doing here? This dungeon is sealed by my magic and I noticed only Aiz went past the seal while I was recasting it. Before I opened my lips, the elf narrowed her eyes dangerously at me. I'll remind you that I can be much scarier than the Amazon woman here, therefore you better answer honestly or suffer the consequences. I take my words back, this elf is a lot scarier than that Evelda. She doesn't waste any breath and cut to the point instantly. Hell! Angelica pales compared to this elf. But, seriously though? Can't you see that I'm just a kid? Well, physically. I had to keep the urge to roll my eyes at her questioning. I'm Shiro Emiya and I was sleeping somewhere nearby the stairs heading down to the next floor before I saved Miss Wallenstein here from a hell minotaur. I stole a glance at Aiz who had a discontent look on her face. Sorry, but I better act formally for now since I don't want to deal with a troublesome matter in case you are really a princess or someone related. Your papa seems normal, but the elf in front of me is definitely royalty, her presence alone screams kneel, you peasant. A queen or princess perhaps. The elf woman is still glaring at me as if trying to probe any lies coming out of my mouth. As for why I'm here, I can't tell you the reason because I don't even know how I got here. The elf raised a brow at my answer. Then, what was the last thing you remember before you got into the dungeon? I closed my eyes and breathed a little before opening them. I gave them a pained smile as I answered. I was at my home, laying down with the bodies of my 2 dead friends, waiting for my own inevitable death. I can hear the group gasping for breath after they heard my answer, but that soon is disturbed by Aiz. Seldia Oni-sama. Aiz hissed at the elf woman called Seldia, perhaps unhappy with how the elf forced an answer from me. However, now Aiz is being targeted by the elf's glare. I can see Aiz flinching at it, but she still has a determined look on her face. Shiro saved my life, even now he killed all the hell ants by himself. I owe my life to him. You shouldn't ask something personal until he tells us by his own volition. The 2 women only gave her a look without saying anything, but there was a tint of surprise on their expressions. Then I glanced at Aiz's father who was still dumbfounded by how Aiz confronted the elf. I guess she had never been brave up until now, huh? After several seconds of staring contest between Aiz and Seldia, the stunned papa finally made a sound. Cough. Seldia, Evelda, I agree with Aiz on this matter. Aiz papa finally stood up and said with a wry smile. Can't you overlook this matter once? I mean, he saved Aiz and I think it's enough for us to at least not interrogate him further for that. Albert-san then looks at me with a smile before those kind eyes turn into a small glare as he sees Aiz taking my hand. He's one of those dads, isn't he? Great. Fine. The elf replied with a small sigh. He's in your hand to settle then. Albert-san nodded to the elf woman gratefully, but that smile of his is becoming more strained since Aiz here is linking her hand with mine. Even one of his eyes is twitching. You're strong, boy. Tell me, were those friends of yours also as strong as you? I turned to the Amazon woman. Gone were the pressures she gave when she charged at me, replaced by an easygoing one. However, her questions were a bit uncomfortable. Eveldine-san. It's all right, Aiz. I smiled at her before turning to the Amazon. For the answer that you're looking for, yes, those 2 women are probably stronger or at least at the same level as you. Sakura with Berserker class and Angelica with Gilgamesh card installed surely would be too strong to handle, especially with Angelica spamming noble phantasms combined with her own mage craft. I see. The woman closed her eyes, and her tone filled with empathy. To hear that there were other women out there that can keep up with me was such a delight to hear. My deep condolences for your loss. Evelda bowed at me. And please forgive me for asking, she apologized as her tone got a bit cheery before she continued. I was curious since you are strong enough to keep up with me other than Al over there. I blinked until I realized what I had done. Oh, shit. Perhaps noticing the small frown that I made, she started to grin at me again. You didn't even struggle when my sword met yours after that dance we had. You must be a powerhouse yourselves, Ed. I can only let out an awkward laugh before Aiz answers in my stead. Shiro is really strong and talented. He killed hell minotaurs with one swing, used magic, and summoned swords to kill groups of ants just now. I almost face-palmed myself if I didn't remember that hunting is still in my grip. I forget to ask her to keep quiet about what I'm capable of. Most of them come from hunting itself though, since it was very effective against monsters. Now the 3 are staring at me with interest as if I'm a unique specimen. I didn't show anything flashy other than projecting swords, so I guess that's that. His sword also thrummed when a monster approaches us. Wait, what? How can she know that? I didn't tell him about that matter. Oh? I'm liking you more and more, boy. A human child barely 10 can use magic and somehow keep up with Evelda. Is that a glint in their eyes? Enough, you two. Albert-san decided to interrupt them, which almost made me feel grateful to him if not for the small glare he constantly gave me. We can question him more at a later time after we get out of here, Arya is worried. The two women agreed reluctantly with Albert San's suggestion before he offered his hand for Aiz to come with him. Let's go, Aiz. I'll go with Shirou. I deadpanned at the blonde girl beside me who tightened her arm around mine before I heard stifled laughter and giggle from the Amazon and the elf. Albert San also had a face like a dead man when he heard her daughter say that. I see, then, let's go. He turned around before throwing another glare at me. The two women followed him with amused expressions before the Amazon smacked my back with her crazy strength. If I were a normal kid, I might be dead from that smack alone. I sighed inwardly. Let's go, Shirou. Aiz pulled my hand as we followed the group and I did so. Oh, right. I forgot that when I saw the silver longsword in Albert San's hand, its information and history flowed to me as usual. It was a normal sword made by a very skilled smith, but what was more surprising than that is, that this man, Albert Wallenstein, is probably the strongest human I ever met. Way stronger than the Amazon and the elf. For the first time after I arrived in this world, I'm glad that it was not him who charged at me. Oath fulfilled and a new tale begins. Chapter 3. The word strong doesn't justify the black-haired man called Albert who is currently fighting at the front line. That is what I thought as I watch him killing monsters here and there before Hrunting could even sense them coming at us. He's showing off. I turned to the jade-haired elf called Seldia. She was fuming as if exasperated at how Albert San acted. Oh, I know that he's trying to show that he is much better than me and I don't deny that. His weapon itself told me that I will have no chance to win unless I manifest my reality marble and spam swords against him. Oh, let him be. He's just jealous that Aiz-chan here is going with Shirou than him. Better let him vent off right now rather than later. Yes, I agree with the Amazon woman, Evelda. I don't want to be his target later on when we get out of the dungeon. But still. I turned at the blonde girl who still had her arm linked with mine. She was admiring his father with a happy expression. Why don't you go to him? No, actually, please go to him since I can't stand the look your papa gives me anymore. Shirou, isn't it? I turned to Seldia who suddenly called out my name while we kept walking forward with Albert San killing every monster in his sight. Why yes. You don't need to be nervous, she chuckled. I'm not going to eat you or anything, but perhaps Albert over there would. Ahaha. I can't deny that. I've been wondering, why are some of your hair and parts of your skin have different colors? And that scar on your face? Well, I didn't expect she would outrightly ask me that question. I was lucky that only veterans like them could see the scar right now or Aiz would have freaked out. It was thin, but I guess I shouldn't underestimate their eyes. It's because I overused my magic when I started using it. I lied about my age but not the reasons why some of my hair and parts of my skin have different colors. As for this, I pointed at the scar she mentioned. I'll answer it later. Seldia hummed at my answer before she began to question me again. Tell me more about your magic. I said that you summoned swords. Luets of powerful swords. Aiz corrected. I gave her a small chuckle at that. Yes, I summoned swords with my magic, including the sword in my hand right now. It's better not to tell her about my magecraft too detailed. HOH. The two women's eyes narrowed at Hrunting. I can feel that sword is not just a normal sword. What can it do? Its potency increased when I fight monsters. I answered the curious Amazon. Does it work on a dragon? Dragons? It should be. Since Beowulf killed a dragon before he succumbed to the dragon's poison. The two women's eyes widened. Is that hope that I see in their eyes? Hey boy, let me hold that sword of yours for a moment. I nodded at Evelda before handing Hrunting to her. Then she swung it several times as if trying its balance. This is incredible, with this, perhaps we could kill it. She muttered all of that but I could hear it clearly. My suspicion was growing as I listened to the two that mentioned dragon as a singular, not plural. I did suspect that dragons exist in this world, but the way they mentioned a dragon and not dragons was basically saying there was only one dragon in this world and perhaps really destructive. Can you make more than one? The elf turned at me. Her voice was a bit pitched as if excited from the sword alone. Yes. Shirou. Do it again. Aiz called in an exciting way. I gave her a light pat, a habit that I used to do when alone with Miyu. Albert San too had returned to our group after finishing up all possible nearby monsters. What's wrong? He asked before turning to Evelda, who was holding my sword. Is there something wrong with it, Evelda? It's a dragon-killing sword. I could see the surprise in Albert San's expression very clearly, and I didn't like it. Not one bit. By the way, I better correct them first, or they will assume that sword is specialized in killing dragons. It's not a dragon-killing sword, it just has greater potency against monsters. Even so, this sword will be a boon to us. I tilted my head to the side at the Amazon's remark as she grinned at me. What did I get myself into this time? If they get excited over hunting, I wonder if I should bring out bombing and Ascalon? Even without releasing their noble phantasm, their steel alone is enough to wound dragons if not kill them. I sighed before calling out to the three excited adults. I'm sorry to bother you three, but didn't Albert San say that there is someone worried for Aiz here? The three looked at each other for a few seconds, then decided to leave the matter for later. Boy, let me use this sword to test it against the monsters here. With me and Al, you don't need to worry about the incoming monsters on our way out. Sure. Aiz took my hand again before we resumed our walk toward the exit, then Seldia began to walk behind us as if to protect us from incoming monsters from behind. I won't pry about your magic anymore, since I know the feeling of being asked about something that I don't want to share with anyone. Glad to hear that. I appreciate it. I nodded gratefully at the elf, and she did the same to me. On our way to the exit, I can see Evelda grinning as she cleaves through the monsters she encounters like a madwoman. It's like cutting butter with no resistant. She yelled with a ferocious grin as the monsters she killed started to become too much gore for a kid to watch. Albert San stood right in front of us as he tried to have Aiz not watch the scene with heads, body parts, and innards flying everywhere in front of us. One thing that bothers me is that there is no blood at all. The monsters either get absorbed by the ground or they turned into smoke. Did I mention that they drop a crystal thingy after they got killed? Seldia-san is collecting the crystals along the way if they aren't broken by the Amazon's attacks. Seldia-san, what are those crystals? I asked with curiosity in my voice. These magic stones? We use them in our daily lives, such as powering stoves, lanterns, and some others. I guess you're still a little child since you don't know how important these things are. She chided me with a small sigh, but I was happy to welcome it. I'm really glad kids in this world don't have any knowledge about those crystals at an early age, or I will have to give them another reason as to why I don't know mundane things like that. While I'm deep in my contemplation eyeing those magic stones, I notice that Albert San is trying to have Aiz hold hand with him. That made me think about one thing. I wonder if I would act like that if there's a boy approaching Miyu. Then I tried to imagine grown-up Miyu in her wedding dress getting married to some other man. Shirou? Are you alright? You look like you want to cry. Aiz asked worriedly. She closed in on me after she shook her papa away, which depressed the doting father again. Nothing, I just had a nightmarish thought. I shook my head and tried to smile at the worried blonde girl. Calm down, Emiya Shirou. I'm sure whoever she's married to later, that man will make him happy. Shirou, you're making that look again. I slapped my face twice on the cheeks, which surprised the three around me. Yes, I'm fine now, thanks for worrying about me, Aiz. Why you re-welcome, Shirou? I nodded at Aiz before looking at Albert, who somehow had a knowing grin on his smug face. He couldn't possibly know what I was thinking, right? Shirou, isn't it? I nodded. That was the first time he finally talked to me. As a father, I'm grateful that you saved my daughter. I was about to nod again at him, but... However, I won't let you get close to my cute eyes. I deadpanned at the adult man. I could see from the corner of my eye that Evelda too was shocked at her friend's outright declaration toward a kid. Her hand was still moving though, not stopping killing the monsters approaching us. Seldia too dropped the bags of magic stones she had collected to the ground. Her expression was kind of funny since she had always been regal ever since we met. Papa! You're doing it again! Aiz yelled with a flushed face. The three of us, me and the women, turned to Aiz, noticing that this isn't the first time her father says those words, judging from Aiz's comment. You always say that when I play with boys at the park. This time, I'll tell Mama. Hi. Albert San just gawked at his daughter after Aiz deliberately announced that she would tell her mother about this matter. It's surprising to see how someone you usually protect stands for herself, right? The same with Miyu for me. I smiled bitterly before I interrupted the father and daughter. Cough. Everyone turned at me except for Evelda, who was still busy with the monsters, but I was sure that she could hear us. I don't mind if you don't want me to get close to your daughter, but please, in the future, keep your eyes on her. Your carelessness almost let your daughter lose her life. Well, the boy said it, Al. Evelda snorted, followed with a laughter as she finished wiping out the monsters before she continued talking. Can't believe the day I see someone other than us berate him, moreover it's a kid slightly older than Aiz-chan herself. It seems that he is not just your happy-go-lucky kid like the others if he could make that statement. Seldia too chuckled at Albert-san, who couldn't believe what he just heard from a kid's mouth. Shirou. You weren't serious when you said that you won't get close to me, right? Aiz asked with fear behind her voice. I shook my head slowly. She was too attached to me even though we just met not too long ago. It wasn't good, of course. Might as well get it out now rather than later. Aiz, I know you're still a kid, but you're too trusting of someone. I might be a bad person that purposely let the monster chase you and then saved you for my own goal, you know. I could feel the adult's eyes were on me, not because of my reasoning but perhaps at how a boy my age could have that kind of thought. Aiz then shook her head. No, no. I know that you're a good person since you paid attention to small details about me. You noticed that I was cold and gave me your coat. You also gave me all your food without leaving any for yourself. She's now throwing a tantrum at me without stopping. I have to look up to the adults for help, except the two women are now grinning at me while Albert-san is just dumbfounded at how the situation goes for him. Aiz-chan, Evelda began with a cooing tone, and Aiz turned to her. Do you want to get close to Shirou here? The blonde girl nodded hastily before Seldia now opened her lips. I'll let you know that you cannot laze around with your study if we allow you to get close to Shirou here. I'll put my effort 100% into my study. She answered again, this time full of confidence, and Seldia nodded happily with a very rare smile that I saw for the first time. Now, Albert, do you want us to tell Arya about this matter, or you will give your blessing for the two? Ugh. Seems like Albert-san can't run away anymore from this matter. In the end, he reluctantly nods at us before Aiz wrapped her arms around my neck as her cheek rubbed mine. The two women were happy to see Aiz like that, but I could feel the death glare from her father on my side. What do I do to get them every time Aiz does this? The five of us continued to walk with Albert-san at the front this time. He's still throwing glares at me every time he turns to check on Aiz, who has her arm linked with me. We don't talk much since we don't want to attract monsters, but sometimes she whispers something barely audible to me and I just nod correspondingly at her. Then all of a sudden, Albert-san made a hand sign to stop. Hi. This is the first time I see a ghost. Is that also a phantasmal species? Be careful, don't let it get close to you. We can't hurt or kill it with normal attacks either, only magic can do that. I looked at Albert-san in disbelief. Seldia, would you? The elf nodded readily before she started chanting her magic. It was in a language that I couldn't comprehend. We call them wraiths, their ability is to steal the happy memories of people they get close to. How do we get them back then if our memories got stolen? We kill them. However, once a wraith steals its prey's memories, they will try to make an immediate escape. As Albert-san explained that, he had picked Aiz up and held her in his arms to avoid the incoming wraiths and I followed suit. Evelda. I'll leave it to you to wave them off of Seldia. Buy her some time. Not a problem. The Amazon replied with a grin. She had returned grunting to me and used her greatsword instead. I nimbly dodged the incoming wraith by taking a huge leap backward and repeating them several times to avoid letting them get close to me. I glanced at grunting before I swung it at the sword-length wraith to see if it works against them. To my expectation, it killed one of the wraith easily without any resistance. It made a really annoying sound when it disappeared. Damn, should have expected that sword works on wraiths. I heard Evelda's muttering as she waved off the wraiths surrounding them. It's incredible to see her move like that while protecting someone in the middle of a chant. Shirou. Behind you. Aiz yelled at me with a fearful tone before I noticed a wraith had crept up on me. Seeing it up close, it doesn't have any skin or anything, only skulls covered with white transparent silk. It only has its upper part of the human body, not the bottom part. I swung grunting at the closing in wraith, killing it while nimbly siding to step, and lowered my head as another wraith flew past me. These things are tenacious. I grit my teeth as I look at the elf who is still chanting her spell. Whatever it is, I hope she can finish it faster. I look at the approaching wraiths, this time they come with hefty numbers toward me. Of course, I don't let them get close to me, nevertheless, allow them to lay their skeleton fingers on me, but I think I underestimate them since one of those wraiths just came out from the ground in my blind side. Before I knew it, the wraith opened its skeleton mouth and I felt something fly out of me. I wish upon the stars, that we can be real siblings. The memory of that night, when Miyu and I truly became brother and sister was slowly disappearing from my mind, and in another second, it was gone. While I did remember who Miyu is, I felt hollow. I couldn't remember how we became siblings at all. It was as if some part of your memories was wiped out clean and you couldn't remember any of it, but you have the result. I fell to my knee, but my hand holding Hrunting was still moving to keep those wraiths away. Shirou. I can feel someone standing near me with Aiz's voice nearby. Right now, it doesn't matter to me. No words of consolation can heal me if I don't get my memory back. I have to kill it. The last thing that I'll allow this world to do to me is erase my memories of my sister. Give it back. A black metal bow was projected in my left grip and Hrunting in my right was thrumming as it altered itself into an aerodynamic design. I scrunched my brows in anger and gritted my teeth really hard that I could hear them making noises. Shirou. I knocked Hrunting to the altered black bow to suit my height. I drew the metal string far back, making a screeching sound, enough to make an adult wince in pain. My eyes followed the wraith that stole my memories. It went past through the dungeon wall without stopping. Hrunting. I loosened my fingers, and the now arrow sword pierced through the wraiths in its way, chasing after the wraith that stole my memories. It drilled through the pillars, rocks, and walls without any trouble. Let light be its judgment, Hylig's licked. Followed by it, I could hear Seldia finish her chant and raise her staff, which also served as a pole arm to the air when a bright golden light emitted from it, killing all the wraiths in the area. While it did shine brightly, it didn't hurt our eyes since we didn't need to shut them. After a few seconds, I can feel Hrunting finally hit its target and decided to dismiss it. Shirou, are you alright? Aiz held my hand as I still had my attention toward the wall the wraith went to. Yes, don't worry about it. My voice was toneless with no feeling behind it. I could hear the adults trying to console me, but there was no need for that because I could see white transparent smog coming at me through the dungeon wall. No way. I don't know who says that, but I don't care, I'm just glad that it finally returns to me. When it enters my body, I can finally remember how the two of us became real siblings. I sighed in relief at that before I turned around to see the adults gawking at me. What? It is impossible for Seldia's magic to reach the wraith that escaped this room, therefore it must be the arrow that you let loose from before. I look at Albert-san. This man's sharp. That's correct. I raised my hand and projected Hrunting again after dismissing the black bow. When used as an arrow, it will kill its prey no matter how many obstacles it hid behind and how far it escapes. I altered the sword to let them see how I did it. Again, the three were gawking at me as if I were something else. You're full of surprises, boy. The Amazon grinned at me, knowing that I had recovered my memory. Chant less magic? Even I can't do that. The elf is now smirking at me as if studying a curious object. Then I turned at the tugging on my shirt's sleeve and found Aiz looking sad at me. Shirou, are you really alright? I saw you make a really scary face just now. Ah, yes. Sorry for that. I was furious about that thing stealing my precious memory. I scratched my cheek sheepishly. I must have made her scared of me. No, it's fine, Shirou. I will be really angry too if my happy memories get stolen. I nodded at her. So, what's the memory about? I had some of mine stolen years ago, but we can still make them again. I turned toward the Amazon. I knew she was crude, but I didn't mind it at all. I smiled at her. It was the memory of my sister. I can't possibly make them again since she had gone to somewhere impossible for us to reach. Oh! The Amazon turned sullen before Seldia smacked the back of her head with her staff. From the corner of my eyes, I could see Albert-san sighing at Evelda with a pained expression. While they might have got the wrong idea, it was better for them to think it that way, although it was a bit painful for me to not correct it. After all, I didn't want them to have me explaining what I meant by alive but not reachable. Sorry about my friend there, she didn't mean anything bad. I nodded at the black-haired man. Then, shall we move on? Albert led the way this time with Evelda behind him, us behind the Amazon, and Saldia at the rear. We didn't encounter any more wraiths, which was good since I hate it when they stole my memory. That didn't mean we didn't meet any monsters though. The Minotaurs and ants were spawning at an incredible rate as if preventing us to reach the exit, but that was for naught since Albert-san and Evelda disposed of them easily. After around a few minutes of walking, we finally reached the exit. As we passed through it, I could hear someone running toward us, and before Aiz beside me could let go of my hand, she was hugged by a woman with the same hair color as her. Aiz. Mama. I watched the mother and daughter's reunion with a small smile for several seconds before I looked at our surroundings. We were in the middle of the forest with no nearby human settlements as far as my eyes could see. There were quite many other people surrounding the dungeon's entrance. There were humans, elves, short-stature people, perhaps dwarves, people with wolf ears, and many other kinds of races. Amazing! I uttered in a small voice. This was the first time I saw many different kinds of races with my own eyes. As I was amazed by our surroundings, I could feel Aiz tugging my sleeve before I turned to face the almost similar mother and daughter with their age as their only differences. Shirou, your face! Aiz fearfully said, and I noticed what she meant. Albert-san and his companions too can finally see the scar that Sakura made, though they were not as surprised as the blonde girl. It doesn't hurt anymore, you don't have to worry about it. Aiz nodded before her mother finally opened her lips. And who might this be, dear? The woman asked her daughter with a soothing voice. However, instead of Aiz who answered her mother, the Amazon cut in. His name is Shirou Emiya, the one who saved Aiz-chan from Hell Minotaur. Also, Al here told Shirou that he won't allow him to get close to Aiz-chan here. Albert-san's jaw dropped at his friend's sudden betrayal, while Arya, the blonde woman's name, looked at her husband in disbelief. But that wasn't all, since it was Saldia's turn to add some more. Apparently, this is not the first time Albert had threatened boys to not get close to Aiz here, since Aiz herself said so. Well, that sealed Albert-san's fate, since her wife was not glaring at him anymore but wearing a smile that did not reach her eyes on her face. So that's why I didn't see any boys get closer to our eyes. Do you have something else to add, dear? Wait, Arya. It's just. Yeah, no matter where I am, you must never make a woman mad, since even the strongest man in the world cowered before her. I watched the two's interaction for a while before I decided to distract his wife. Better to get him to owe me, even if it's a small matter. Ahem. I cleared my throat purposely, then all the attention was directed at me. I can understand Albert-san's reasoning that he doesn't want any boys to get close to a beautiful girl such Aiz. I take a glance at Aiz, whose cheeks reddened from being called beautiful, before turning back at the adults. Oh? Mind to explain? Asked Evelda with a grin. I raised my sister on my own for years, therefore, I might have the same feeling as Albert-san if I see any boys get close to her. Hearing my answer, the adults who went to save Aiz didn't question anything and just nodded at me. Arya, however, was intrigued by it. Oh my, I can't wait to see your sister if that is so. I smiled at the blonde woman when Albert-san whispered something to her ears. I didn't need to reinforce my hearing to know what it was, since Arya's complexion went pale as soon as she heard it. My apology, I didn't think that something so tragic had happened. I nodded at the blonde woman. My name is Arya, just Arya, and I'm the mother of Aiz, who you saved, and the wife of Albert Wallenstein. I thank you for saving our precious daughter. It's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am. My name is Shirou Emiya, and you're welcome. Shirou it is then. She nodded. Come, tell me about yourself and how you came to save my Aiz. I love stories where heroes come to rescue their princesses. With that said, I got pulled along by Arya-san while the rest of the adults continued to do whatever they needed to do with the dungeon. I could see some of them scrutinizing me, probably confused as to how a kid other than Aiz managed to get inside the dungeon and survived until Albert-san's group came to save us. After a bit of walking, we finally got into a tent that was quite big and could fit a family inside. There were several more tents other than this, and I could see some kind of small arena not far from the tents. There were women from different races busy with their work, including children playing around the tents. It seems they've been staying here for quite a while. We're a group of mercenaries if you're curious. Arya-san supplied with a smile after ushering me to sit on the chair with Aiz helping her mother. Usually, we traveled from one place to another in a short time, but until the next job comes in, we decided to stay here and rebuild the seal that Saldia created for the dungeon's entrance, that and another reason. I noticed a small change in her tone when she said the last part. Arya-san then flicked her fingers and several ice cubes formed from nothing fell into the cup. Wait a minute, didn't I say that no humans can use magic? Then how did Arya-san do that? Oh, Mama's special like you Shirou, she can use magic too. As if noticing my confusion, this time it was Aiz who supplied me with the information that I needed. Oh? Shirou can use magic too. Arya-san came from the small kitchen with a tray of drinks and snacks before putting them on the table. Arya-san sat in front of me while Aiz sat beside me, confusing the former but giggling nevertheless. She doesn't show any disapproval like Albert-san, so I guess it's fine. It seems our Aiz has taken a liking to you, that's a relief. Again, the last part that she uttered makes me really uncomfortable. First, it was when Evelda was busy with hunting and dragon, singular, not plural. Then Albert-san too was showing a huge interest in the weapon and saying that it was a boon for them, and now, Arya-san acted like her daughter would be in the safe hands if something happened to them. I took a sip from the tea that she served. Then Shirou? Would you like to learn magic from me? Hi. I widened my eyes in surprise when she offered me something ridiculous right at the start. I almost spat out the tea if I didn't compose myself sooner. It was a bit baffling since I heard from Kiritsugu that Magus was very secretive about their magecraft. Well, it wasn't wrong since Saldia herself said that she didn't want anyone to know about her magic. As for Arya-san, I didn't know whether because it was rare for her to meet someone able to use magic outside of demi-human races that she acted on impulse or she was just testing me. Not so fast, Arya. Voiced someone from outside of the tent, revealing Albert, Evelda, Saldia, a dwarf, and a wolf man coming inside the tent. Dear? What do you mean? And are you done with the dungeon? Instead of Albert-san, Saldia answered her. Yes, it only needed a quick finishing touch when we realized Aiz was gone. As for what Albert here said, he wants to test the kid's prowess before you teach him anything, Arya. Arya-san stood up from her seat while Aiz tilted her head to the side, not quite understanding what was going on. Albert, he's just a kid. Arya, trust me on this matter. I need to know what the kid can do before we let him run around our camp or tell him about the matter or you teach him anything. Besides, he could keep up with Evelda easily and I believe that he hadn't used all of his power yet. Arya-san turned at me in surprise before looking back at her husband. The husband and wife had a staring contest before the latter finally nodded. Fine, but I'll have you know if you purposely beat him up because you don't want him to get close to Aiz, you're in a world of suffering, Mr. Alfred-san let out a dry laugh at his wife's threat before his eyes focused on me. Shirou Emiya, come with me to the arena, I'll test you personally. I nod at the man. They are planning something and whatever it is, it concerns Aiz heavily. Shirou? Are you going to fight Papa? Aiz asked worriedly as she looked at me and then at Albert-san. It's just a light spar, besides, if I want to get close to you, then I have to get your father's approval, right? Oh, okay then. She covered her face with the coat I lent her, a bit flustered with my statement. If you say it like that, it feels like you're asking for Aiz's hand for marriage, boy. Evelda grinned at me while the other two women made a small laugh. The dwarf and the werewolf man too found that funny and began to tease Albert-san. The blonde girl in question just tilted her head to the side, not understanding what the adults were talking about, and I just gave the Amazon a dry laugh. Albert-san however wasn't happy with it and gave me a very strained smile. I could see his eye twitching at me before he turned around toward the tent's entrance followed by the dwarf and the man with wolf ears. It was only the first day since my arrival in this world, and I had to deal with things like this. I sighed before following them. Oath fulfilled and a new tale begins. Chapter 4. With audiences of diverse ages and races sitting far from the stage, the two of us are currently standing in the middle of the arena. Some people appear perplexed as to why Albert-san is engaging in combat with a child of just 10 years old. Shirou. Best of luck. With her mother seated alongside her, Aiz cheered for me. I waved my hand at the girl before turning my attention to the man, whose aura grew darker. He prepared his grips and drew his silver longsword. Despite the fact that we have just recently met, I sometimes feel sorry for this man. His wife won't let him beat me up lest she gets angry at him, and her daughter doesn't even say a word to him. I sighed and shut my eyes, attempting to relax. I took several breaths in and out and then focused on all my senses. I hadn't had time to adjust my mind to my present body because it had only been a few hours since I had arrived in this world. Trace on. The masses made a tiny gasp as I murmured those words before tracing the same silver longsword in my palm, shocking both the man and them. I made the decision to try and use the sword against him because I immediately saw how he would use it and wanted to see how he would respond to his usual sword technique. I opened my eyes and repeatedly swing the sword. I had to maintain balance with the sword because it is actually taller than I am in order to avoid being pulled by its weight. A little taken aback by what he had seen, the man questioned, "You can summon the same sword as mine?" "Most weapons that I've seen, actually." After giving him an honest answer, I assumed albeit position, sans with my left hand on my side and my sword hand held forward, followed by my right leg. Evelda, the referee, was holding a coin when she looked at Albert and then at me with interest. We nodded at her and she grinned, but her eyes were fixed on me like a predator sizing up its prey. She tossed the coin into the air and jumped out of the arena. The minute the coin landed, Albert-san and I simultaneously kicked the ground and rushed in the same direction. Because of his higher speed than mine, I had to adjust my timing somewhat so that our swords met at exactly the same moment. Our height disparity also caused me problems because he could utilize his weight to overcome me. Clang! Our swords crossed in the center of the arena, filling the space with the sound of grinding metal. I didn't stop like Albert-san, instead, I let go of one of my grips from the handle and traced another silver longsword in my left hand before I swung it hard toward his abdomen, which was not protected by anything except for his shirt. I anticipated what he would do next. He would push my right hand away and then jump back from the incoming swing. He did this effortlessly, but I stopped the sword in my left hand in mid-swing and changed it into a thrust, which he blocked with the surface of his sword. He grunted at it, but my right hand didn't idly around while my left hand was busy. I raised my sword hand high up, leaving a huge opening for him to use, then swiftly swung it down with my now reinforced limb as he widened his eyes in surprise. With remarkable speed, Albert-san batted the tip of the sword in my left hand aside before raising his own blade to intercept the one coming at him from my right. As expected of the strongest man, he effortlessly copes with my speed if he needs to. But his right was open because he had lifted his sword to intercept my sword coming from his left. However, he refused to give me another opportunity to attack and instead used additional force in his arms to shove my right hand away, whirl completely around, and deliver a roundhouse kick that I narrowly missed. I instinctively held the blade in front of my body to absorb the impact, despite being thrown rather far. To prevent myself from leaving the arena, I thrust the sword in my right hand into the ground. This guy is a monster. I grinned slightly as I closely observed him. His visage was that of a warrior, not the adoring father I had previously witnessed. He made a strong, serious stand as his eyes attempted to analyze me. I kicked the ground once more before hurling one of the two longswords towards Albert-san. He instantly recovered his posture after deflecting it, and this time, we traded blows several times. Even though he didn't aim for a vital area, it was clear who was at a disadvantage because I could feel cuts all over my shirt and my body. After a series of blows, the sword in my right hand was pulled away. I then used the momentum it gave me to kick him in the right hand with my right foot, thus removing his weapon. After rising to my feet, I traced a second longsword and swung it with my right hand at the black-haired man. He grinned at me and moved his gauntlet to block my impending thrust just before my attack hit him. He swiftly grabbed his sword, which was still in the air, and kicked me again, forcing us to return to our starting position. I was startled at the sudden clamor of the crowd before comprehending that this was supposed to be a spar, not a death match. Who's that kid? I was barely able to see what they did in that small amount of time. Damn! That kid's probably as strong as Evelda there. I can't believe it. He's copying Albert's swordplay. He's not older than our children here and yet he is already that strong. Those were some of the comments that I'd heard as I tried to steady my breath. Damn boy! Were you holding back that much when we had our dance before? Evelda grumbled while frowning, yet it was obvious that she was excited. Mama, what happened? Why is everybody cheering so loudly? Mama doesn't get it either. Aiz and her mother didn't appear to notice what had just transpired until Celdia, who sat on the opposite side of Aiz, started speaking. It would seem that Shirou managed to put the pressure on Albert at the first exchange. The boy then summoned another of Albert's sword before they exchanged some blows, then he threw one of his swords at Albert as a distraction and Shirou kicked the sword in Albert's hand. He almost landed a hit before Albert managed to block it with his gauntlets, regain his sword, and delivered a kick which made them return to their starting position. That all happened in just a few seconds. Yes, under than 10 seconds to be exact. The boy has a lot of potentials to become even stronger than this when trained properly, if only we have the time. I frowned as the elf finished. I don't like what Celdia said just now. Shirou. I turned back to look at the black-haired man who was still holding out for an opportunity to strike. Come at me with all you've got, you are still holding a lot of things. I suggest you, do not hold back. No matter what you do here, I'll make sure that it won't get out to anyone else. At his suggestion, I briefly blinked before grinning a little. Are you really sure about that, old man? You might get a heart attack if I go all out, you know. Albert-san appeared astonished by the change in my speech as soon as I said that. Do it, and if you call me old man again, I'll make sure to beat you up even if my wife told me not to. Fine then, I won't hold back anymore. Wait. You're still holding back? I nodded in response to Evelda's startled query. Well damn, alright then, whatever you do, do not involve the audience or destroy this place. Don't worry. I grinned at Evelda. Celdia-san, can you make a strong barrier around the arena? I asked the elf. I'm afraid what I'm about to do next will have swords flying here and there. Do not worry about us, I had prepared them for an occasion like this for quite a time. Swords. I chuckled at Aiz's comment before I nodded and said the phrase. I am the bone of my sword. Albert's POV. He is chanting. In the middle of the fight. I deflected the swords that flew in my direction at a speed that normal eyes couldn't keep up. What the? Where did those swords come from? The boy had left his position, and I had been preoccupied with dodging all the blades that were coming my way. I ducked to avoid the swing coming from behind me when my instinct kicked in. Fast. In my entire life, I have never encountered anyone else that can move that fast. What's up with this kid? Even though I've known he's abnormal since the moment I first met him, right now he seems like a whole other person. Steel is my body, and fire is my blood. I then heard something strike the ground, and someone abruptly got up from their seat. Concurrent chanting? A kid his age. Since only Celdia, the elf queen, would be surprised by this, I didn't need to turn around to see who said it. It must have been advanced skill if she was taken aback by the boys chanting in the middle of the fight. There were more swords blazing at me. The blades seem to follow the child wherever he goes. He's using those swords as a decoy so he can finish his spell. I'm fortunate the child requested Celdia to set up a barrier because otherwise, those blades might have hurt the others. I can now make out spears, axes, halberds, lances, polearms, and other weapons among those shooting at me. I can easily parry them, but for the time being, I'll just move around the arena to see what else he might be able to do. I have created over 1,000 blades. The rate of the weapons firing at me suddenly increased as soon as he concluded his third line. Even as a distraction, isn't this a little bit too much? How many swords that he can summon anyway? As I made my way toward the youngster, I had to parry a few of the weapons. But this time, he was prepared for me, holding two falchions in the contrasting hues of black and white instead of my long sword. Spirit and technique, flawless and firm. I blocked the falchions that he threw my way. After I deflected the twin swords, I realized something was amiss since there was absolutely no sound of them hitting the ground. I shook my thoughts off before focusing on the boy in front of me. When I managed to approach near to the child while deflecting the swords, another set of those falchions are once more in his hands, confirming my suspicion that the boy can call the identical swords as many times as he wishes. Our strength rips the mountains. He engaged in close combat with those falchions, but despite his seeming vulnerability, his openings were well concealed to trained eyes. One thing I wanted to point out was that, despite being slow right now, he had extraordinary strength enough to match, if not surpass, that of my comrades. How was it possible for a child just a few years older than Aiz to have this kind of strength? I made a small grunt as we traded blows for a few seconds before I could hear something whirring toward me from behind. I caught a glimpse of those two falchions he had previously thrown approaching me out of the corner of my eye. I'm curious to know if those falchions of him have something special about them, similar to the sword he used in the dungeon. I smiled a little. For his age, this young man is exceptional. I used the gauntlet in my left hand to repel the approaching falchions coming from my back. I knew that they would come again later, therefore I had to at least make the boy surrender before it happened. Our swords split the water. I looked at the boy and began to notice the change in his sword play. It was smoother than the previous ones, as if flowing like water. There were no errors in every move he made. Every swing connected to the next ones naturally. I was handicapped with only one sword while the boy could summon as many as he could, not that I would use that kind of reasoning if there was a possibility I will lose to this boy. Our names reached the Imperial Villa. Once again, after he gained a bit of a distance, he threw another set of those falchions and I was forced to deflect them. This time I didn't pause and immediately went at the boy. However, it seemed that I underestimated his summoning speed, since in his hands there was another set of those falchions, but this time their sizes were much bigger and the dull sides were jagged like feathers. The two of us cannot hold the heavens together. As he finished uttering the last word, I heard it again, this time twice the number. The youngster had dodged my blow and was about to strike me with his swords crossed when two sets of those falchions came charging at us from behind me. Crab. Triple-linked crane wings. Shirou's POV. It was not enough. Albert-san had increased his speed and strength even more by the time I thought I had landed a blow. With a swing, he easily destroyed the incoming sets of falchions as well as the overedge ones in my hands. I laughed quietly to myself. He saw it for the first time and managed to break all of them. While he was caught off guard at first, he quickly rendered my attacks ineffective when he increased his speed and strength even further. I took a few steps back. Before I continued the line for my reality marble, something struck my mind. Is it really wise to pull off my trump card right off the bat? While I knew from his weapon that Albert-san is a good person, that didn't mean everyone else was. With that thought supporting me, I decided to push off my idea of deploying my reality marble. Let's just go with Noble Phantasm and the likes. From my UBW, I drew the red barbed spear belonging to the Hound of Ulster, Lane. I twirled the spear before assuming Lancer's stance. A stance that made me appear to be about to pounce on my prey. Albert's eyes were fixed on the spear as he entered his stance, no surprise given the bloodlust it radiated. Nope, this is not going to work. This spear is 2 meters long and I'm in a body of a kid. Oh well, let's just try it. I launched myself at Albert-san, and when he was in my spear's strike zone, I gave him several quick thrusts which he blocked splendidly. He tried to jump backward, but the moment he did that, I closed into the black-haired man and gave him several more thrusts. Then, he tried to counter-attack in between the blocking. Unfortunately for him, instead of thrusts, I switched to slashes which almost got him in the gut. Tisk. With that click of a tongue, this time he was the one who closed into me. Another unfortunate timing for him, since I already swung the spear as I rotated my body at full speed, hoping to hit him with the long shaft of the spear. At that small amount of window time, he put his longsword between his left arm and the spear's shaft to absorb the blow, which threw him quite far from my spot. From the intensity of our close combat, I could hear some of the audience let out a withheld breath. "You're nuts!" the black-haired man called out with a grin. Spearmen usually would use their freedom of range to win the fight, but you just charged in like a mad dog. I knew it. There was no way someone as skilled as him would approve of Lancer's fighting style. We got into our stance again, but this time, before either of us could jump at each other, a certain black-haired Amazon came up to me with her great sword in her hand instead. "What the hell?" I cried out as I blocked the great sword. "Evelda. Sorry, Al. I just can't wait for it anymore," the woman answered as her eyes never left mine. "Here I thought you were just a boy, but the moment you fought like that, with your instincts alone, something inside me awakened and I had to get my turn. This woman's crazy." I pushed the great sword away, followed by a kick to her abdomen which she blocked with her leg. "Ah ha ha ha. Now see me. Let me have a taste of you." I couldn't help but shudder at the woman. But since she wants one, then who am I to say no? I'd like to know how powerful Albert-san's mercenary group is anyway. What happens next? Well, she managed to stay alive while being bombarded with a rain of swords. Some of them grazed her since she didn't particularly care about blocking or deflecting them. For our close combat, I had to say I was very surprised when I saw her punching the spear off of my hand with a bare fist. Eventually, we stopped after we had our dance with me tracing the silver longsword that Albert-san used. She wanted to have more including the audience, but since Celdia-san yelled out an order to stop, the Amazon decided to save it for another time. Evelda laughed, but eventually, she stopped after a few seconds. Nice fight. It's been a while since I go all out like that. I deadpanned at the Amazon before she opened her mouth. Then, what will you do now? Do you have plans? I frowned at her inquiry. That's true. In this world, I have nowhere to go. If they let me, the only option I have is to join them. I don't have any, do you mind if I join you? The Amazon turned to face Albert-san who was approaching us as I stared up at her. If you're thinking to get close to. I gave him the most impassive look I could muster, then I spoke in a tired tone. Trust me, that's the last thing I have in my mind. Albert-san gripped my shoulders and gave me a hard shake, as though shocked by my response. Are you saying that you don't want to get close to my daughter? What the hell, old man? Weren't you the one who said that you won't let me get close to her? I'm not an old man yet, damn it. I'm still in my 20s. And yes, I did say that I won't let you get close to her, but, arg. What in the world? I turned at the Amazon who was sighing exasperatedly. Just, ignore him, he's just an idiot, overdoting parent. I did so after Albert-san's companions separated us and followed the Amazon toward Aiz who was waiting for us excitedly. Shirou. That was amazing. There were so many swords flying. I smiled wryly at the girl who tackled me. Then I turned at the approaching women, Arya-san and Celdia-san. I concur. I've never seen or heard about the magic that can summon swords and propel themselves without any commands. Mind telling us about it? The elf asked while Arya-san too looked amazed at it with a bit of sadness mixed in her expression. Well, I called it Unlimited Blade Works. Unlimited Blade Works, huh? I've never heard of that magic before. Is it limited to you? I nodded at her. Unless there was another Emiya Shirou in this world. I see. While that magic sounds amazing, that's what also limits me from using other kinds of magic. What do you mean? The elf asked. I can't use any other magic since, well, maybe you can say that I'm overspecialized in that one magic alone. That's unfortunate, but have you tried using other magic? I nodded at the elf while she just sighed at my answer. One more question then, your concurrent chanting and chant connection, where and how did you learn to do that at an early age? Concurrent chanting? Chant connection? What are they? I gave the elf a confused look as she began to explain what they mean. You chanted while fighting, that's what concurrent chanting is. As for the chant connection, I recall after the third line of your magic, you chanted a different one, correct? I nodded. That's what I called chant connection, we used our first lines of one magic to change the strength of our next magic. I gave her a wry smile. To be honest, I was forced to learn all of that in one go and I just can't remember how I did it. It just came to me naturally as if I've known how to do that for a long time. Another fabrication based on truth. It appears that since arriving in this world, I have lied quite a bit. If you say that way, that means you're quite a prodigy to be able to use concurrent chanting and chant connection even without learning the basic knowledge of it. If this makes you feel better, right now, there are only two people that can use those kinds of high-level chanting, me and you. Celdia smiled at me and I nodded in return. Anyway, Evelda cut in. Shirou here is staying with us from now on. We need to prepare the tent for him since everyone else's is already occupied. The Amazon then looked at me. Is a small size one enough for you? Yes, that'll be enough. I nodded before giving Aiz a light pat. Can I help? At least I have to prepare my own place to rest for tonight. But I want to play with you, Shirou. I smiled wryly at the whining Aiz. Later, okay? It makes me feel bad if I don't help them. Aiz pouted at me before Arya-san put her hands on Aiz's shoulder. You are pretty responsible for a kid, Shirou. Evelda laughed at me. Come then, I'll show you where your spot is. I gave her a nod and followed the Amazon before waving at the pouting blonde girl in her mother's hands. Albert walked up to the three as Aiz, Arya and Seldia watched the redhead and their companion proceed toward the open area to set up the former's tent. Then? What do you think, Albert? The elf whispered the moment she saw him. I'm conflicted. At one point, I want him to join us for our journey, but I also want him to stay with Aiz. He might give us a chance to win this, but we don't know the full strength of it. I know, that's why I'm conflicted. Before Arya joined Albert and Seldia, the two watched Arya nod at Aiz and then let the latter go where Shirou was heading to. Al, dear. Arya, what do you think is the best choice, we bring him with us, or have him stay with Aiz? The options her husband presented to Arya made her appear a little depressed. As a friend, a mercenary, and your companion, I want him to go with us. However, as a parent, a mother, and your wife, I want him to stay with Aiz. Albert and Seldia averted their eyes away from Arya. If we bring Shirou with us, then Aiz would be all alone, she's too attached to the boy already, and I wouldn't dare to let that happen to our precious daughter. Despite the fact that Albert's face cramped at his wife's comments and he agreed that Aiz was too attached to the boy, he chose not to comment. Seldia began to speak as she sensed the atmosphere becoming more intense. If I recall correctly, Arya, you two were attached to Albert here the moment he saved you, right? As she continued to observe the two, Seldia teased them. Arya enthusiastically laughed at her friend's comment, while Albert became red at the elf's teasing. It's true. I suppose she resembles her mother, huh? Arya followed. She's still too young, Arya. The same as I was when you saved me, Al. Seldia snickered at the two's antics. For now, let's just observe those two. While it's a bit unfortunate that he can't use other magic, I'll still teach him knowledge of the magic our race use and you teach him an Aiz in combat, Albert. Aiz doesn't need. She does. The black-haired man was cut off by Seldia's stern tone. We don't know what will happen to her after this. If we have Shirou go with us, then she will be left alone with no knowledge or anything. And if Shirou goes with her, the boy can protect and further her training so that she can protect herself. Albert gritted his teeth. The thought of letting his daughter use a sword and fight monsters flashed in his mind. Then he felt someone clutching his hand tightly. Dear, I agree with Seldia in this matter. If we want our precious daughter to be safe, we need to give her whatever we can right now. Arya. After briefly closing them, Albert opened them again with renewed resolve. Shirou's training was fine in his eyes, but Aiz was another story. He had no other options at this point because time was of the essence. If his daughter was going to pick up a sword in the future, it was preferable if it happened now so he could train her. All right, I'll do it. Seldia nodded with a small smile on her face. Good. Now, excuse me for I have something to do regarding our plan. We're counting on you, Seldia. And I won't disappoint, Arya. With that, the elf left the couple alone as the two walked toward their tent. What do you think of Shirou, Arya? I think he's a good kid, why? Are you finally allowing him to get close to our Aiz? Ah, why are you pouting? You do know that if we allow Shirou to get close to Aiz, that means we are already acquainted with our future son-in-law if Shirou does go with her, right? It's better than someone that we don't know. Or maybe we can have the marriage ceremony right now but have Shirou promise us not to do the deed until they grow up. Albert fell on his knee with his hand holding his chest after he heard his wife saying the word he didn't want to hear concerning his daughter. You're exaggerating, dear. Arya sighed as she helped her husband to stand up. You're now acting the same way as my father did, you know? Didn't you say that you won't turn into a father like that? Ugh. Enough with being overdramatic, Albert Wallenstein. Arya chided with a gentle tone while her husband let out a heavy sigh at her. I know. Let's just not talk about our daughter's marriage. Arya teased. Why do you look so happy at the notion of our daughter being with Shirou? Why wouldn't I? I mean, we have planned this for years since it showed up. Arya's eyes went solemn as she inhaled. I despaired knowing that our Aiz would be in a place she wouldn't know by herself. Knowing how stressed his wife had been, Albert flinched. We wouldn't be there to see her grow up, so we would miss her as she did. As she got older, she would find someone she loved, and finally get married to someone we wouldn't know. But now she's found someone who will be there for her even if we aren't. Arya gave Albert a smile. Does that mean, you're voting for the boy to go with Aiz? Yes. I see. The wife nodded and the two entered their own tent. Shirou was busy arranging the tent with Evelda's and some of Albert's companions' assistants when he observed a blonde girl approaching him from the direction he came from. Shirou! Aiz called out as she waved her hand. Shirou could only smile as he saw the cheery girl approaching them when he heard the Amazon snort. Aiz-chan appears to like you a lot. I have no comment. He rolled his eyes. Evelda arched her brow at the boy. You know, usually boys would be happy if a pretty girl approaches them as Aiz did, you're weird. Still no comment. Why you brat? Evelda stopped as she noticed Aiz was getting closer. Shirou. Is there anything that I can help with? Aiz inquired while panting. Right now. The boy looked around to see if Aiz could assist him with anything until his gaze was drawn to a sheet that needed to be cleaned. Ah, perhaps you can lead me to the river to clean this sheet. Sure. Let's go then, Shirou. Aiz then proceeded to pick up the basket with the white sheet until Shirou stopped her. Let me do the heavy lifting, okay? I'll let you do the washing. Aiz pouted at him for stopping her, but she quickly nodded and led Shirou while holding his free hand. Evelda and the rest of her companions watched them in amusement until a voice called for them to continue with the tent. Oath fulfilled and a new tale begins. Chapter 5. Having helped the mercenaries who were watching our spar set up camp for me, I gained some new acquaintances, including Aiz, who stuck with me even as I left to gather the equipment I needed to stock my camp. Aiz. Yes, Shirou? Is there something that I can do to help? Do you need any extra blanket or anything else? I gave the girl a wry smile. For now, I guess not, but I'll make sure to tell you if I need something. When I said that, Aiz beamed a smile at me. She's really adorable when she smiles like that. My hand had moved toward her head and gently ruffled her hair before I realized it. She pressed her head against my palm as if she wanted more pats. Ah, aren't you two just the cutest? We turned to face Arya-san, the owner of the voice we recognized. Arya-san, good evening. I removed my hand from Aiz's head, and the girl pouted before turning to her mother. In that regard, I guess she's similar to Miyu. Miyu, after all, enjoys head pats. Is it time for dinner already, Mama? Aiz asked as she took my hand in hers and walked toward Arya-san. Her mother cooed at how close Aiz was to me. She giggled before patting both of our heads. I'm not really a child, Arya-san. But it felt good in some ways. I couldn't remember what it was like to have a mother because I had lost my memory in that disaster, but perhaps if I could, this is how it felt to be patted by a mother. Yes, today's dinner will be with everyone else at the center of the camp. I had arranged for them to make this one a feast to welcome Shirou into our family. Really? Yay! Aiz turned to me with a smile. Isn't this great, Shirou? Are you hurt somewhere? Huh? Arya-san then turned to face me, her face filled with surprise. Was there something on my face? I tried to wipe my face with my hand, but it came into contact with something warm on my cheeks. I wiped them away quickly with my sleeve. Shirou, why are you crying? Aiz inquired, clearly unaware of the situation. However, Arya-san seemed to know why, but she did not respond to her daughter. Instead, she put her hand on my head and ruffled my hair. Shirou, I don't know how much painful things you've gone through, but please remember, now, we are your new family, every one of us is your family, and you are not alone anymore. Huh, come to think of it. This is the third time I'll have a new family. First was when Kiritsugu adopted me, then, after he passed away, I had to act distant to Miyu to fulfill my old man's wish to save the world, but then one day we truly become siblings and we became real family. Several months later, she returned, we defeated Ainsworth, and she left again, peacefully this time with her new family. Is it wrong for me to have a new family in this different world? I guess not, right? Yeah, thanks. I smiled at Aiz's mother and she nodded in satisfaction at me before pulling me and Aiz into a hug. Promise me, whatever happens, the two of you will always be there for each other. Aiz energetically answered. I promise, Mama. I nodded in response to her request. After all, I had planned on doing so. Then Arya let us go and led the way, with me and Aiz walking behind her and holding hands, which was Aiz's request. not mine, mind you. We soon arrived at a large crowd circling the large bonfire, which was surrounded by smaller bonfires with pots hanging above them. I could hear sizzling from the pots, so whatever was inside was probably going to be our dinner. There are really a lot of people here. I didn't really notice it when I sparred with Albert-san. I gawked as I waved my free hand at the people I met eyes with. They did the same to me kindly as if they had already treated me as part of their group. Well, you were quite absorbed with my husband, I can't blame you for that. Arya-san giggled as she led us toward our seats. Theirs and I were only sitting with them for today. At their seats, we spotted Albert-san, Seldia, Evelda, the werewolf man, and the dwarf, Yuri-san, and Galmus-san if I wasn't mistaken. We had the opportunity to talk when they assisted me in building my camp. While Yuri appeared to be a grumpy young man, if I can compare him to someone, perhaps Julian, he was actually very kind, especially to children. Galmus the dwarf, on the other hand, was like any other old man, he liked to drink, laugh, and talk to children, claiming that the next generation is always interesting. Albert-san noticed us and waved to her wife before noticing my hand in Aiz. His friends, too, noticed the three of us and quickly made fun of Albert for being an overprotective father, saying he should have given his blessing already. I'm sorry if my husband is bothering you, Arya-san said with a sigh at the end of it. No, it's fine. In fact, the more I see him like that, the more I can avoid what kind of a man I would be in the future. I laughed dryly at the woman. Papa aaa. Aiz giddily waved her hand to her father, instantly brightening his mood. That made me sigh with relief. Aiz had always been the best calming solution in the matter of Al. Arya supplied from my side. I can see why. Oh? And what did you see? Arya-san teased me with a playful voice. She's adorable and cheerful, and her smile is contagious. If it weren't for Albert-san's glaring, any boy her age would have her as their first love. I chuckled while looking at the black-haired man who was grinning like an idiot. Did you hear that, Aiz? Shirou here just called you cute. Ehehe, thanks Shirou, I also think that you're cool, even cooler than Papa. We were quite close to her father's group at the time Aiz shouted that last part, and they had heard what Aiz said. Nuu. Albert-san yelled dramatically, his face turning into that painting of a woman screaming. Gahahaha. Tough luck pal. Looks like you are not the coolest anymore in the lad's eyes. Galmus, you're torturing the poor man here, wahahahaha. Oh god. That look is priceless Al. Sorry Al, but it's time for you to step down from the number one position of the coolest man in Aiz-chan's eyes, pft. Even I can't help you with this, Albert, pft. It seems little Aiz here prefers the boy to you. The elf snickered following the dwarf, the werewolf man, and the Amazon. Arya-san and I both cringed, while Aiz just tilted her head cutesily, confused as to why they were laughing at her father. However, because she believed it was an adult matter, she did not press for an answer. I am so glad that she's still a kid. We were soon seated before Albert-san grudgingly delivered the opening speech and introduced me to everyone. He motioned for me to come to the center of the circle for that, and despite the fact that it was only a brief introduction, everyone applauded and welcomed me into their circle with open arms. After that, the feast began and we started to eat. To my surprise, whatever the dinner was, they were really good. When I asked who made this at Arya-san, she told me that it was the effort of every housewife and female mercenary in their group. I nodded. I knew I shouldn't have said this, but their culinary culture was really delicious for a world that was far less advanced than mine. Later, some of the kids around Aiz and my age started flocking to me. Aiz stayed and talked with the kids instead of leaving. Since there were other boys in their group using this opportunity to get to know her daughter, I cast a quick glance at the overbearing father. Yup. Albert-san is glaring at us as his friends are laughing behind him. Even Arya-san appeared to have given up on scolding her husband as she shook her head. I turned to Aiz, and around her were boys with several girls wanting to have a talk with the blonde girl. Seems like the boys are really using this chance to get to know her since they couldn't get the chance to do it normally. Emiya-san. I turned to the girl, a voice calling for my name, and found two elves girls with orange and green hair reaching their shoulders. Ah, Fina and Ryolu, right. The two elves nodded with cheery expressions from me having called their names correctly. They were also there when we were building my tent. Are you enjoying the feast? Ryolu asked me. Her cheeks had a slight pink tint to them, but other than that, her face was expressionless and composed. Despite having lived with the group for a considerable amount of time, they must have been anxious to greet someone who was not of their kind. Yes, it was very delicious. I'm glad I tried it because I've never eaten anything like that before. The two exhaled in relief when I gave them an honest response. We're happy to hear that. I was actually really nervous about whether our food will suit your palate. Fina said after calming her breath. Oh? Did you girls help out too? It's amazing for you to be able to cook like that at a such young age. The girls giggled at my remark. Emiya-san, the way you said that made you look like Galmas-san, you know. I facepalmed mentally. I swear. I always forget that I'm not 17 years old anymore. No, really. From where I'm from, it's really impressive when kids our age can cook so well. Do you want to trade recipes, if it is alright with you? I wish to learn more about your race's culinary traditions. Ryolu and Fina looked at each other briefly before they nodded at me. Then, what about tomorrow? Ryolu suggested. In the morning we make breakfast for those who have troubles with cooking. We'll be preparing ingredients the moment the sun rise, so don't be late, Emiya-san. Fina finished after Ryolu. I nodded at the two. Got it. I'll make sure not to be late. Oh, and please call me Shirou, that is my given name while Emiya is my family name. The two elf girls nodded again, and we exchanged a few words before they went to clean up the plates and utensils. I wanted to help, but they said I should leave it to them because I was the main star tonight. After they left, I spotted some parents urging their daughters to talk to me. While their daughters were a little shy when they greeted me, after some small talk, we became friends. What they mostly wanted to know was how I got so strong despite being the same age as them, and what my hobbies were, to which I replied archery and cooking. They were surprised that a boy would be interested in cooking, but they didn't chastise me for it. Instead, they asked me to cook once in a while. I agreed right away because I didn't intend to stay without doing anything even if my body was that of a child. Girls and boys who knew one of my hobbies was archery requested my company one day for their wild game hunt, and the adults agreed. I've got a lot planned already, I guess. As we were talking, I felt a tug on my sleeve. I turned and found the suspect was pouting hard at me with an unimpressed complexion. Ugh, looks like Aiz-chan's being jealous here seeing Shirou so popular with the girls. Remind me of her father, isn't he, Arya? Well, girls like strong boys after all. Besides, Shirou seems to have that charm to attract anyone that he had talked with. Unlike Al, who kept saving girls here and there just to break their hearts by choosing me. Gah! Didn't I say that I didn't do it on purpose? Honestly, I just hope that Shirou isn't like you, dear. The kid's better than Albert here, I knew from the moment Yuri and I had a chance to speak with him. He is someone that would do anything for a single person he treasures, even sacrificing the world if he needs to. That's the feeling that I've got from the kid. The shorty here's right. That kid's not just some abnormal kid like Albert, perhaps more than that. What do you mean by that, Yuri? I'm sure you understand what I meant, Albert. That boy is still hiding his real self, I can smell it. He's a monster in a kid's body. Someone that has killed for only God knows how many, perhaps a lot than us. He is someone that has seen a lot of wars and survived them all. Hi. That's quite an unexpected observation. I didn't expect Yuri-san and Galmas-san could draw that much of a conclusion just from talking with me once. By letting Miyu escape from my own world, I ended up destroying it in the end even though it was because of Pandora's box. Not that I will ever regret it. Shirou, you're not listening to me, right? I'm quite mad at you right now, you know. Aiz pouted once again and I had to give her a pat to calm her down. The kids around us just laughed at her antics before they started small talks with us again. Look at that, I guess Aiz been watching the two of you for too much. I guess like daughter like mother at. It's your fault, mister. The next time we have a squabble, we must not show it in front of our daughter. Got it? As the adults' laughter filled the area, I turned to the night sky above. Miyu will love it. That time I didn't notice the blonde girl's ears perked up when I said that until a bit later when she pestered me to tell her about Miyu. It had been quite some time since the feast, and everything had been cleaned up. Except for those on night watch duty, everyone had returned to their respective tents to end the day. I can't sleep at all. Not even counting the sheep helped me with it. I opened my eyes, projected a spare coat because my own was still with Aiz, and exited my tent. The moment I stepped out of my private quarter, I bumped into someone. Whoa! I quickly grabbed whatever the man was carrying before it fell to the ground unless it made loud noises in the middle of the night. Nice safe kid. They would have made a lot of noise if they fell down. No, it was my fault for bumping into you. The man in front of me wore a blue scarf around his neck and had bright red hair. He was dressed in a kimono with a dark blue shirt underneath. Never seen you before, you new here? Ah, yes, I joined this noon sir. I looked down at the hammer in my hand. A blacksmith huh? No wonder. This spot is usually empty and now there's a tent protruding on it. He called out to me after noticing I hadn't responded. Is my smithying hammer caught your interest kid? The man grinned and I nodded slightly at him. Come with me then, since you're accepted by Al and the others, I don't mind showing you the way I smith. The redhead smith turned to me. That's right, I didn't catch your name, what did you say your name again? That's because I didn't tell you. I sighed before answering the man. I'm Shirou Emiya, just call me Shirou. Shirou eh? Good one. My name's Crossover. Just call me Crossover since I gave my first name to my kid back in my hometown already. Nice to meet ya kid. Got it. Then, Crossover, do you have a forge or anything besides this anvil, hammer, and some metals? I asked him as we walked out of the camp, slightly bowing to the guards who were keeping watch. Huh? What are you saying? A real blacksmith can make a weapon even without a forge. As long as there are fire and hammer, it's enough for me to make a weapon. You said fire, but I can't see anything hot enough to help you with your portable forge. Crossover then shook his finger at me, as if reprimanding a child. At times like this, you can always rely on this magic sword that I've always kept on my side. He then pulled out a small red dagger from his waist pocket. My eyes quickly feast on it and the copy of it was stored in my reality marble. While not on the same level as Noble Phantasm, I could tell that the flame this dagger produced would not be a normal cooking flame, but one hot enough to melt metals. There was also something else that interested me greatly. A spirit's blessing. Crossover froze in his place as soon as I said that, then turned to face me with an expression that I couldn't read. Kid, where did you hear that? His voice was bland as if someone else speaking to me. Sorry, but, my eyes are kind of special, and the history of every weapon I've seen will flow into me immediately, including how they were made. Crossover stared at me for a while before sighing exasperatedly. Just promise me this, don't ever tell anyone about this matter, since I don't want my family to be hunted down just because we can make magic swords. I nodded at the man, promising that I would keep them secret. Good, now, this spot will do I guess. Crossover looked around before putting down the anvil. There was no grass or tree in our surroundings, clearly safe from a forest fire. I handed him the metal he had previously dropped and he received it before putting the iron on the rock. Now kid, listen, this dagger absorbs the magical energy in the air, therefore you only need to swing it hard at the metal. I took the dagger Crossover handed to me and nodded at him. A magic sword huh? This kind of excites me. You ready? In 1, 2, 3, go. I swing the dagger toward the metal, and true enough, flames sprout out from it. Hold it for a while kid. I did what he told me to and after quite a while, the iron's color turned red from intense heat. He used his tongs to pick the metal and soon the first sound of a hammer striking metal altered my entire perspective on weapons. Clang! I felt something stir inside me as I watched him strike the metal. Although I was aware of the manufacturing process for the weapons in my UBW, this was the first time I had really witnessed it with my own eyes. No wonder Gilgamesh called me a faker since I couldn't possibly understand the passion of every smith poured into each of their swings to the metal. He had been a king and he must have seen his people forging weapons with blood, sweat, and tears. That must be one of the reasons he wouldn't accept my existence as I just counterfeited all of them. I smirked inwardly. I guess I have to thank the King of Heroes for one more thing huh? Clang! I watched Crossover hammering the metal, from slow and steady noise like a bell to swift and precise ones. The ringing of metals echoed through the night, it went for hours as I kept swinging the red dagger on it in case the iron got cold. Both of us sweat like crazy since we were close to the fire, but it didn't seem to faze the smith as his eyes were deeply focused on his steel. After quite a while, he called for me. "Kid, use this dagger this time, swing it, but slowly this time." He handed me a blue magic dagger and I swung it toward the hot metal. After some time later, Crossover huffed excitedly. "Not bad, not bad." The smith looked at the sword he just made appreciatively. His eyes gleamed as they focused on the sword. I opened my mouth at that moment. "Crossover, do you think you can teach me how to smith?" The man turned at me incredulously. "Look kid, while I'm happy that you want to learn it, I'm not sure you're..." Before he finished whatever he was about to say, I traced a copy of Albert San's sword. His eyes were filled with surprise when he saw me do that. "You can use magic?" he asked and I nodded. "Moreover, that sword is the one that I made for Al." I handed the sword to Crossover and he inspected it carefully. After some time, the smith opened his mouth with shaking hands. "It's a genuine article." "No, it's a fake." I interrupted his thought before he cemented it. "My magic allows me to create a perfect copy of weapons that I've seen." Swords were beginning to form around us and stabbed down onto the ground. I've met someone who called me faker since all I could do was counterfeiting his treasures, which were the originals of all of these. Crosso's eyes turned toward the swords. They were like kids finding a new toy to play with. Crosso looked left. Crosso looked right. Crosso grinned. "Hell yeah!" He raised his fist into the air giddily. "You got yourself a deal kid. I'll teach you how to smith and you'll show me every sword that you've seen. Easy peasy." I grinned in return. Deal. 3 RDPOV. It was the morning after the night Shirou met Crosso, the blacksmith of the mercenaries. "Shirou, you look awful, did you not sleep well?" "Crosso, you're back, and you look awful." Aiz and Albert asked their person in question respectively. "Ahaha, I didn't get a wink of sleep since I was teaching the kid over there the basic of smithing." The smith spoke passionately even though he looked tired. "Shirou? I'm surprised you taught someone else than your family to smith." "That's because he showed me his collection of weapons." Crosso answered cheerfully. "Damn, those weapons were crazy good qualities. I've been stagnating all these years and now I met someone that has a ridiculously large collection of weapons. Where did you find the kid anyway? And why does Aiz Tan over there looks so chummy with him?" Crosso ended as he sipped his morning tea. "In the dungeon, he saved Aiz before the Hell Minotaur got to her." Albert sighed as he bit into his breakfast. "Dude, you really need to keep an eye on your daughter." I know. Arya scolded me yesterday and the boy did too, even harsher than Arya." "He did?" Crosso smirked. "Man, I wish I could have seen you being scolded by a kid." "Not funny, Crosso." Yeah. The smith turned at the two kids where Aiz was currently wiping the redhead's mouth from the sauce. "Mao, you're being quite messy today, Shirou." Sorry. It won't happen again, you can finish your breakfast now." Shirou patted Aiz on the head before the girl smiled and returned to eating her breakfast. "Oi, aren't those two being too close?" "I know right? But Arya told me to let them be." Crosso gave him a pitiful look but decided to tease him anyway. "Mon, I'm glad that my kid is a boy. I don't have to worry about women getting close to him." Albert clicked his tongue before moving on with the topic. "Speaking of your kid, did you tell them? Your family, I mean." Crosso fell silent before nodding solemnly to Albert. "Yeah, my parents gave me their consent. My son too understands the current situation." "I'm sorry about this Crosso, my friend." The smith then gave his friend a hearty chuckle. "Don't worry, after all, if I backed away from your request, how would I face my wife later on when we meet again? She would beat you up and call you a coward, definitely." The two men laughed heartily, surprising the others, including Shirou, who had overheard their conversation. His face turned sour as a result of it, but he forced himself not to show it. "Do you have any plans after this, Shirou? Papa said that he wanted to begin our training today." "Oh." That took the redhead out of his musing. "Your father is going to train us?" Aiz nodded. Shirou blinked. Wait. The redhead pinched the bridge of his nose and asked again. "You're actually saying that your papa, the one who cares a lot about you, wants to train you to use a sword?" His question earned another nod from the girl with a slight pout adorning her face. Even if I look like this, I can lift a sword, you know, Shirou. Shirou pulled away a bit from the glaring girl. That wasn't what I mean, I just never thought that Albert-san would allow you to learn how to use a sword. I thought he would teach you when it was on your birthday. I know, right? Papa told me that the sooner the better since you are here now, Shirou. Aiz returned to her breakfast after saying that, leaving Shirou with his own thought again. Then, he shrugged. If he was going to earn tutelage from the strongest man in the world, he would gladly accept it. Hey, Shirou! A voice called for him. Both the redhead and blonde girl turned around and saw Yuri the werewolf man along with several boys and girls and some adults behind him. You done yet? We're about to begin the hunt now. Shirou nodded before he quickly finished his breakfast. Surprisingly, Aiz too quickly finished hers, then the two cleaned up the plate. When Shirou noticed that Aiz was still following close behind him, he stopped in his tracks and turned around. You're not planning to come with me, right? Aiz tilted her head to the side. Mama told me that it's fine for me to go everywhere as long as I stay close to you, Shirou. But... Aiz then gave him the biggest sad puppy eyes she could make. I can't. Shirou faltered a bit when he saw that look Aiz gave him when a voice suddenly cut in. Aiz-tan. No. Aiz-tan. Yes. The blonde girl snapped back at her father with ferocity in her voice. Albert blanched. Everyone who saw that was dumbfounded at how the blonde girl was snapping back at her father since it had never happened before. Go for it, Aiz-chan. Mommy's rooting for you. Voiced Arya cheerfully. Albert felt his shoulders slump down when a hand reached for his back. Even my wife. Tough luck, dude. Crossover stood up from his seat. I want to see how the kid performs since I missed your spar with him yesterday. I'll make sure to keep an eye on Aiz-tan too. Thanks, Crossover, I owe you a lot. Don't mind it, that's what's friends for. The two adults bumped fists before they approached the kids. Yo, kid. I'm coming with you too. Crossover. Shirou looked at him before sighing. Fine then, but stay close, okay? He said to Aiz, earning a bright smile from the girl before the three went to Yuri's group. Aiz-chan is coming too. Alright. Time to show her how cool I can be. Let's see who can score the most. I'll do my best to impress Aiz-chan. Boys. They're just hairless monkeys like Mom says. Hey, this is our chance to get close to Shirou too. They can distract Aiz and we can get close to him. Ooh, I like that idea. From the corner of Shirou's eyes, he could see Albert glaring at the boys while Crossover just gave them a hearty laugh. The overprotective father then approached Shirou and held his shoulders tightly. Okay, listen here, brat, if I find a single tear on her cloth dash. Daddy, no. Aiz protested. Daddy, yes. Shirou deadpanned at the father before he felt the grip on his shoulders tightening again. I get it already, I'll make sure nothing touches her. Swear it. Alright. I get it. Geez. Nodding in satisfaction, Albert let go of Shirou before turning to his daughter. Now, Aiz-tan dash. Before he could continue though, Arya came up beside Albert and pulled him away by yanking his ear. Ow ow ow. Arya. That hurts. The group sweat dropped at the black-haired man with that. Shirou turned around and found Crossover brought a magic sword strapped on his belt while the other hunters were equipped with bows and arrows, save for Yuri who didn't bring anything with him. What? The werewolf man asked Shirou. You're not taking any weapons with you. No need to. Yuri snorted. I'm confident with my speed, deer or anything alike won't get away from me if I went at them, besides I do well with my fists and legs. I'll use a weapon when the time comes. The werewolf man finished with determined eyes as if anticipating what was coming in the near future. What about you? Before Yuri finished his question, Shirou projected his modified black metal bow. Right, I forget that you can summon any kinds of weapon. Yuri grinned before turning to the others. After making sure they were all prepared, he ordered the group to go. Though most of the kids were around Shirou and Aiz's age, they were clearly better than the latter since each one of them easily climbed on a tree and moved from one branch to another with ease. Damn! Shirou muttered with awe. Okay, Aiz-tan. Here, get on my Crossover crouched in front of the girl. Shirou. Carry me. Slash. Both redheads gaped at Aiz. Even Albert, who had joined his wife, Seldia, and Evelda, was shocked by what his daughter asked of the boy. The latter three, however, were enjoying their antics as they sipped their morning tea. Now, Aiz-tan, you do know Shirou is still a kid, right? Even if he's older than you, he can't possibly carry you while traveling through the branches, not to say that they will break. Aiz then smiled at the redhead smith. Shirou decided to be smart and slowly back away from the two. Crossover-san, are you saying that I'm fat? Hey, I didn't mean that. Crossover then turned to his pupil. Oi, kid, help me here. Nope, you dig your own grave. With that, Shirou reinforced his legs and jumped to climb the trees, following the group and leaving behind the red-haired smith with an angry little princess cracking her knuckles. Traitor. Oath fulfilled and a new tale begins. Chapter 6. Shirou Emiya was in a trouble. He had never encountered a situation like this before since he knew what his sister Miyu loved. Things were never difficult with her. Flashback, a day after the hunt. So, what will it be, kid? Asked the older redhead to his apprentice while they were having dinner in their forge. Shirou looked up and blinked. What? Crossover cast an unbelieving glance at his pupil. What do you mean by what? It's in another week, you know. I have no idea what you're talking about. Crossover shook his head and groaned out loud. Aiz's birthday is coming. The younger redhead's eyes were wide open the moment he heard that. Her birthday is on the 25th of December, the same as Christmas, so you better prepare presents for the girl. Wait, presents? As in plural. The older redhead gave a "are you being serious" look toward his apprentice. Birthday and Christmas. Oh. Shirou sighed. The redhead had only known the girl for 2 days and had no idea what she liked or disliked. Can you help? Nope. Crossover made an X with his hands in front of him. You've got to do this on your own. Tisk. Oi, did you just click your tongue? Huh? Did you say anything, Crossover? The older redhead slapped the back of his apprentice's head playfully before mumbling his way out of the forge with the plates. Disrespectful brat. The redhead, who had been left alone in the forge, rubbed the back of his head, thinking about the upcoming week. Presents her. I wonder if I can just forge her a sword as a gift. Crossover had only taught him the fundamentals of smithying the day before. However, Shirou had knowledge of every weapon he owned in his reality marble, so forging each weapon wasn't too difficult, minus their capabilities, of course. He also used different materials because he didn't have the same resources. If I apply the smithying techniques from each weapon, maybe I can try to make my own original ones. The redhead smirked. It would be nice if I could make a sword that is unbreakable and can cut any type of hardness. Flashback ends. It had been 5 days since that day. While Shirou couldn't really make a sword that can cut any type of hardness, at least it was unbreakable. He had no name for the sword yet, but it had a silver blade, a blue guard shaped like S, and a blue grip. And Aiz's main weapon, Desperate. Crossover had given him a material called elkenn, claiming that weapons made from it would be unbreakable, a term called durndal by the older redhead. While it wasn't quite as good as her father's weapon, it was certainly the best Crossover had ever seen, barring his own creation. Shirou's creation was highly praised by the older redhead, who predicted that if he continued down the path of smithying, he would eventually surpass him. Crossover placed the sword on the table. His eye twitched as he shifted his gaze from the sword to his apprentice. What? You're cheating with your magic. The master groaned. You basically have the knowledge of every kinds of smithying technique and you just applied them to this one sword. Shirou looked away, eyes not meeting his master's. I don't know what you're talking about. Crossover sighed. Well, at least you got one present down. What about the other one? Shirou frowned upon hearing that. He had planned to make something to eat for the blonde friend of his, but he didn't know her preferences. Sweets would usually work well for girls. I'm planning to cook or bake something, but I don't know whether she will like it. I'm sure you won't disappoint. Crossover stood up from his seat. Aiz-chan will like whatever you give her, you don't have to worry about that. You proved it already in our dinner nowadays. Shirou's sweat dropped as he remembered the dinner lately. Flashback the same evening after the hunt. A little blonde girl was running, looking for Shirou with snacks in her hands. She spotted the redhead boy talking with one of the adult hunters and sped up toward the boy. Unfortunately she tripped on some pebbles resulting the snack to fall over. Shirou, who heard her yelp, quickly approached Aiz and helped her. She began to tear up as she saw the snacks were all over on the ground, but the redhead told Aiz that he would make some replacement for her and told the girl to wait with her parents. After taking Aiz to her parents, Shirou immediately left for the kitchen and asked the staff to lend him the stove. They were hesitant to lend the kitchen to a youngster like him, especially since he was a boy. However, after a quick taste testing of the quickest dishes he could whip up, the kitchen ladies gladly lent him the kitchen. 25 minutes later. Aiz had stars in her eyes as she looked at the dish in front of her. She poked the fluffy dish with her finger, and like a spring, it bounced back. Aiz then cut a small part of the dish and used the fork to put it in her mouth. The girl squealed. Her eyes glittered from the fluffiness and the sweet taste of honey. Arya, who was sitting beside her daughter, was also curious about the dish Shirou called pancake, therefore she tried to take a bite. The mother squealed before letting out a small sigh of joy. She had never tasted this kind of food before. Albert, who watched his family's reaction, turned at the redhead boy sitting in front of them. "You didn't poison it, did you?" As soon as Albert said that, Shirou lowered his head, eyes covered with his bang. "You're walking on a thin ice there," replied the redhead with a small growl. "Hi! If there's anything that I hold my pride in, then it will be my cooking." The redhead looked up and narrowed his eyes at the black-haired man. "If you dare to say those disrespectful comments again about my cooking, trust me, you won't get a good night's sleep." Albert nodded dumbly. Before her husband could say anything else, Arya cut in. "Shirou, can you teach me how to make this dish?" The boy nodded at Arya before Albert began interrupted. "Humph! I could have make it much better, I bet." "Oh." Arya looked at her husband before glancing at Aiz, who was enjoying the pancake. With a devilish glint in her eyes, she continued. "Why don't you try to make it then, dear? Shirou, could you give the instruction to my dear husband here?" Shirou agreed and then walked away with Albert into the kitchen. Arya knew that her husband was not that bad in the kitchen, but she doubted he could make this kind of dish even with Shirou's guidance. Moreover, she would enjoy how Aiz reacted to his dish and then comparing it with Shirou's. Unknown to the mother, a certain red-haired smith had partaken the pancake with Aiz, praising it highly. Another 25 minutes later. The two blondes were sitting eagerly on the table with different reasons. The daughter couldn't wait to eat more pancakes, while the wife couldn't wait to see her husband's reaction when Aiz said that she preferred Shirou's pancake. "Here you go, Aiz-tan." Albert came up with a plate of pancakes and put it in front of his daughter. In a glance, the pancake looked the same as Shirou's, but Arya knew better that the taste would be lower than the previous one they had. The blonde woman took a glance at Shirou, who shook his head before taking his seat in front of the blondes. A single bite later, Aiz frowned. She looked up at Shirou. "Did you make this, Shirou?" she asked. Then Albert cut in happily. "It's your daddy's cooking, Aiz-tan. How is it? It tastes much better, right?" Aiz looked at his father before frowning again at him. Arya, meanwhile, was trying to stifle a laugh from looking at her daughter's expression. Krauzo, who was still sitting with the family, took a bite of the pancake after her. Splurt! The red-haired smith threw up everything he had had this morning immediately. Albert, who saw that, quickly looked at her daughter right before she commented. "Horrible!" I said. As if struck by a log, Albert fell on his knees with a depressing aura around him and rain clouds formed over his head. "And no way!" Arya laughed at his husband, drawing attention to the other mercenaries nearby, who then began to laugh after hearing the reason that made the leader's wife laugh so hard. After having enough of the entertainment, the wife turned to the younger smith. "Do you know any other dishes that you can make, Shirou?" "Yes, actually, tonight I'll be helping the staffs in the kitchen to cook for dinner." Arya nodded in satisfaction before trying the pancake her husband made. She too frowned at the taste, saying, "This is indeed horrible, dear." Albert cried. Dinner time equals. "Okay. Who made today's dinner?" shouted one of the mercenaries on the dining table. None of the other mercenaries said anything as they were busy devouring their own portion. "Ah! Oi! That's mine you're taking!" yelled the same mercenary. "Shut it! You're not eating it anyway. It was chaos and only Fina, Ryolu, and some other girls and housewives in the kitchen knew who caused this to happen. It was expected since the girls had tasted the dishes the boy created. Karaage, a dish based on chicken meat sliced into bite-sized pieces, coated with flour and spices, and then deep-fried in hot oil. The girls were extremely pleased when they exchanged recipes with the redhead boy. The latter did not only exchange but also improved the recipe they had, and the results were outstanding and very well received by the mercenaries. Albert, Crossover, and Evelda themselves barged into the kitchen demanding to know who made the dinner. The girls swiftly pointed at the redhead who was busy dicing the meat. Shirou! The three yelled. However, what greeted them was not the boy but several swords hanging in front of them. Those who aren't staff aren't allowed to enter the kitchen. The three swallowed hard from the threat. Anyway. We're here to tell you that you can use all the meat to make more of those karaage. The redhead nodded, confirming their request before dismissing the swords, and the group immediately returned to the dining table. Flashback ends. Shirou let out a wry chuckle as he finished remembering it. If you're making something, I suggest you have Yuri and the others gather the ingredients. I'm sure they'll be glad to help if it's about good food. Shirou nodded as he watched his master wave his hand, leaving the forge. The redhead then returned to the table where Desperate was wrapped in its blue sheath, admiring it once more before he too left the forge and prepared to hit the bed early. Meanwhile, Arya was washing up the dishes after their small family had dinner. What's wrong? You seem a bit down. Albert asked the moment he went down after taking their daughter into her room. Oh, nothing dear. Albert sighed before approaching his wife from behind and wrapping his arms around her waist. You're worried about our little princess, right? A slight nod from his wife was enough for Albert to comfort her. That kid will be with him. He will protect her in our place. I know. Arya sniffed. It's just we'll miss a lot of things that will happen in her life. The blonde woman finished as tears started to fall from the corner of her eyes. Albert winced as he heard that. If we were to face it, we have to keep our daughter safe in case we failed. The two couldn't help but stay still, thinking about the incoming future. After a few minutes of silence, Arya wiped her tears with her sleeve before changing the topic. Enough about it, let's just talk about something else. Albert nodded before letting go of his wife. Her birthday's coming up soon and this will be the last birthday we spend with her. Have you thought about what you will give to her? Arya asked as she continued to wash the dishes while Albert went to make some coffee before sitting on the chair. Albert smirked when he heard the question. I had Crossover make me a sword for her. Arya made an unladylike snort when she heard that before stifling a giggle. What's so funny? Oh, it's just. Arya giggled again before continuing. Shirou also had a sword made for our princess, you know. Aiz is not going to choose his present over mine, isn't she? The husband whined. Arya smiled at his husband's antics. Oh, you should have known the answer to that, dear, Arya said while drying her hands. After all, we were the same. Arya gave him a wink before proceeding to make tea for herself. Shit. Language. With eyes at the same time. The little blonde girl was trying to get asleep after her parents tucked her into the bed, however she couldn't help but be excited for her birthday. She had been trying to spend more time with Shirou but the redhead told her that he had something to do. When Aiz asked him about it, Shirou asked her to wait for it on her birthday. That alone made the little girl bubbled with happiness and excitement. Aiz by no means was a stupid girl like those fangirls coming for Shirou. She knew that the redhead had been spending more time in the forge with her uncle and he could guess what he would get her for her present. I can't wait for my birthday. She giggled imagining the present, and since her father was going to teach them about wielding a sword, she could guess that her present would be a sword forged by Shirou himself. Speaking of present, Aiz immediately stood up and went for her cabinet and picked up the present she had wrapped before looking at it lovingly. I hope Shirou likes this since he likes to cook. The next morning, one day before Christmas. It was the busiest morning ever since all the hunters had been notified that their new chef would be making a lot of tasty dishes for the evening. Yuri, the usual chief of the hunting team, were accompanied by more people than usual. Even Galmas and Evelda came along with them to procure the necessity while some others proceed to get some herbs and spices needed. For the foods! Shouted Yuri the werewolf man, followed by his hunting team. With that one yell, everyone left immediately, hoping to return early for the chef to start cooking. In the kitchen, the staffs too were busy preparing everything needed for the evening. Housewives that were usually busy also poured in their help under the chef's command for today, which was Shirou himself. None of the staffs complained about it since he had proven his capabilities. Shirou. The redhead turned at the owner of the voice, Ryolu. What will we do with these chickens? Oh, I was planning to share them with our staffs and extra helps since we'll get busy for tonight and probably won't have the time to make our own foods. Hearing his answer, the elf nodded, giving him a small smile before helping the redhead preparing the dishes. She knew that every time Shirou was the head chef in the kitchen, they wouldn't be able to get some free time to make their own foods, not that they minded since they do enjoy watching people eating their cooking with joy. The other staffs and helpers who heard that too gave the redhead a smile, grateful for Shirou's thought. Not long after that, a little bit in the afternoon, the hunting team returned with multiple wagons, full of their wild game, with the blood drained which eased the kitchen staff's duty. Younger kids who saw the amount were amazed and excited since they knew they would be having tasty treats for the evening. Aiz herself was surprised to see it and immediately realized that Shirou was in the kitchen since she wasn't able to find him in the forge today since it was empty. Other teams who had gone to nearby settlements also returned a bit later and brought back the spices, herbs, and other ingredients that the kitchen needed. They immediately went to the kitchen dropping the stuffs before leaving to help the hunting team skinning the wild game they brought back. One thing that Shirou was glad for was that the hunting team knew how to skin them properly and knew which part was consumable and which parts were not. I can't imagine if I have to do this all alone. The redhead deadpanned at the hunting team, busy with their works before greeting Aiz and having a small chat before he returned to the kitchen. Later at night. Dinner went extremely well with everyone and none complained about the foods served since they were improvised by a certain redhead in the kitchen along with his modern dishes. A bit later after that, Shirou was finally done with the dishwashing before joining Aiz and her family. At first the girls and the housewives insisted that he should take a rest and leave the dishwashing to them, but Shirou persisted that as one of the cooks tonight, he should help until the end. The women knew that he wouldn't budge, therefore they agreed with the redhead boy much to their delight since they could have some talk about recipes and what to cook for the next meals. He arrived at their table and found Aiz was reading a book. "What are you reading there?" the redhead asked as he sat down on the seat in front of the family of three. "It's Dungeon Oratoria." Aiz replied giddily. "This book contains stories of various heroes from ancient times." "Heroes, huh? Every kinds of heroes are recorded in the book." Arya added. "Either they were anti-hero or not, because of their achievements, they were included there. Papa, Mama, and the aunties and uncles are also in the book." Aiz cut in happily while giving Shirou the book about the story of his father and companions fighting strong monsters and won. It ended right there with no more entries. There were no information such as Aiz being the daughter of Albert or the latter having a daughter. It was a possibility that Aiz wasn't included because she didn't participate in those achievements or her parents didn't want people outside of their group knew that Aiz was their daughter. There was also the time when Albert here took my hand from my father by defeating monsters in the Colosseum for a whole night. Arya continued. Too bad since it was a national matters, it wasn't recorded in the book. The married woman ended before pecking her husband's cheek. Shirou's sweat dropped at the married couple while Aiz was staring at the two before looking back at the young redhead. "Mama." "Yes, dear." Arya turned to her daughter with a smile while Albert was sipping his coffee. "Can I do that too with Shirou?" Arya froze in her spot. Albert spat out his coffee to Shirou who luckily dodged it by an inch. Shirou closed his eyes and prepared to run in case the protective father wanted to maim him. Oh dear, Arya held her cheek with one of her hands with a bright smile. "Of course you can dash." "No, you can't." Albert cut in before glaring at the redhead with fury. "Mao, but Papa, you said since you are Mama's hero, no other girls except Mama can do that to you, and since Shirou's my hero, shouldn't I be allowed to do that to him?" "No. You're still too young." Aiz pouted at his father. Her cheeks inflated like a chipmunk making her look adorable that Arya poked them. "Fine." She crossed her arms and turned away from her father. My, Aiz-chan." Arya giggled. "You may not be allowed to kiss Shirou on the lips yet, but you can kiss him on the cheek." Aiz turned to her mother, nodding happily. "Wah dash. No. No kiss allowed." The father interrupted. But dear, you stole my first kiss when you were around Shirou's age. That's irrelevant. Albert crossed his arms. Aiz isn't allowed to kiss that boy no matter what until I say so. Unfair. Aiz said, indignant at her father's decision. Not that she will listen to him since she had her mother's support. Cough. The family turned to the direction of the sound. Is there any more of this book? Shirou looked up at the family, trying to change the topic. I think it would make a great read in my free time. Yup. There are multiple volumes. I'll lend you the first one, Shirou. Aiz answered before picking up the book again and turned to her mother. Mama, can we go back to pick up the book? Arya nodded at her daughter's request before the two left Albert and Shirou alone. The two kept their silence to their own as Albert was sipping his coffee while Shirou was tracing his weapons. Unknown to the redhead, the mercenaries' leader was glancing at someone behind a tree. The figure had a blonde hair and wore a purple and yellow clothing with a spear strapped on his back. The two nodded and the figure behind the tree walked toward the table. Shirou looked up at the boy, young man in front of him. He had blonde hair and wore white pants, and a knight's armor. Under the armor, it could be seen that he was wearing long-sleeved blue shirt. Basically Dim/Fin in DanMachi Anniversary's looks. He had a spear which was strapped on his back. Shirou automatically registered the weapon in his reality marble. Greetings, Shirou Emiya. The blonde young man greeted. Shirou dumbly nodded at him. He didn't really know how to address this young man since he looked like a teenager around 15 to 17, but from his weapon alone, he knew that he was around Albert's age. The name's Dim. The now proclaimed Dim said. He noticed Shirou's confusion and continued. In case you're wondering, I'm a Palam, which is why I'm not that tall, but my age is the same as Albert's. Satisfied with the explanation, it was Shirou's turn to open his mouth. Nice to meet you then, Dim-san. He took a glance at Albert, who was still sipping his coffee, before turning back to the blonde man. Is there anything that I can do for you? Dim grinned fearfully at the redhead. Shirou actually shuddered at how the kind-looking man could grin like that. Actually, I want to fight you. Dim paused, letting Shirou to process what he said before continuing. I heard what you can do from Albert here, but we know you were holding back a lot. Shirou narrowed his eyes at the newcomer, dispersing the weapon he had traced. I don't know why you're holding back, but to join our group, we need to scale how strong you are in case something happened to me or Albert here, since you could say that we're the top in the food chain here. You see. Albert chipped in. I know that you're holding back since you don't want anyone to know your limit, since you don't know about us. But it goes the same for our group. We want to ensure the group's safety, and you holding back is just making yourself untrustworthy. Albert paused, looking at Shirou in the eyes. Sure, you got my wife and daughter's trust, even some of my friends, however, in our eyes, you haven't earned it yet. Shirou closed his eyes and sighed inwardly. He really didn't want to show all his skills. However, what Albert had said has its own point. By holding back, he might endanger everyone in the group. Midnight, meet us in the dungeon's entrance. Dim said with finality. We'll head to the 17th floor with you in charge. Shirou sighed. Looks like I have to accept it. Fine, however, I have my own condition. The two mercenaries perked up. I don't want too many people know what I can do. Only your most trustworthy friends can come. They glanced at each other before nodding. It was an easy request. Very well, I'll be seeing you later, Shirou Emiya. With that, Dim left the table and went to wherever he was needed to, as Shirou's gaze never left the weapon strapped on his back. Sorry about Dim. Albert began with an awkward grin. He had always been like that, it was always about business around him. Don't worry about it. If it was me, I would probably do the same thing. Albert chuckled at the boy. He had always known that Shirou was too mature for someone his age, therefore the reasoning he gave the boy would make sense to him. Anyway, I still don't approve my daughter going after you. Shirou deadpanned at the black-haired mercenary. You're still going with that? Albert shrugged. Later at night. It was hard for the young redhead to slip away from his blonde friend. Shirou had told her that he would celebrate Christmas tomorrow, but no, the girl wanted to wait until the midnight. Luckily for him, Arya managed to convince her daughter to sleep off the day early so that she could wake up early and spend the next day with Shirou from morning till evening. Shirou himself didn't have any problem with it since he had reserved himself tomorrow for Aiz. He had her presents ready, well, not all of them since the second present would still need some time to cook. Anyway, since he had some time to prepare himself, he took some rest before the time to meet Dim and the other comes. Shirou was walking together with Albert in the direction of the dungeon's entrance. When they arrived, the redhead saw some people he knew, Krauzo, Dim, Yuri, Galmus, Evelda, and Seldia. Then his eyes turned to a tanned woman wearing a really revealing outfit similar to Evelda and a face veil. She had long hair tied into ponytail and was pressing her womanly chests into Dim's head. Shirou blanked at the blonde young man. "Do not speak any word of it," replied Dim casually as if this was normal occurrence for him. However, Shirou could see the annoyance in his eyes before he turned back to the tanned woman. "Her name's Elmina, one of my sisters," Evelda stepped up as she saw the confusion in Shirou's eyes. "I see, that explains the attire." Hearing her name was mentioned, Elmina looked at the young redhead. She let go of Dim and walked to Shirou before circling him as if probing him. Satisfied with what she saw, Elmina turned to Albert. A small grin crept behind her veil. "Your daughter chose a fine man," Albert splurted. Krauzo grinned. Yuri, Galmus, and Evelda laughed. Seldia chuckled behind her sleeve. Shirou deadpanned at the Amazon woman. Dim, there was no visible reaction from him, but the corner of his lips curled up a bit. "The name's Elmina. A proud Amazon sister of Evelda, pleasure to meet you." She reached out a hand and Shirou took it. "The pleasure's mine," he said before letting it go and turned to the blonde young man. "Are we going now?" Dim nodded and without waiting any further, he and the others went inside the dungeon, heading to the 17th floor for the young redhead to demonstrate his full power without holding anything back. After all, if it is for the future of the next generation, we will need more chance to win against it, thought the blonde Palom.